Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, it's me. Can everybody hear me, by the way? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Let's just do a quick mic check. Good evening. You're listening to the Twitter space, X space. All right, we're getting some emojis. Great. I'm on my AirPods. What's up? It's Saturday night, and I'm just hanging out, having dinner, eating some ice cream, and I'm beefing with Jordan Peterson and his daughter. And to be honest with you, I don't know the daughter. I don't know anything about her. I know there's this rumor that she's with Andrew Tate, and I had to diss her about that. But to tell you the truth, I don't really know anything about her because I don't really follow e-girls. I don't really care that much. But I do know about Jordan Peterson. I never met him, and I don't know him personally, never spoke with him. But he's been around forever. He's been around longer than me. I remember when he first came on the scene when I was in high school, when he did that talk outside of his university with all the pronoun people. When it all started back, I think that was the first current year, right? When they say, "How could you support this in the current year?" That 2015 was the first time they did that. 2015 was current year zero. That was the current year. I think, right? That's when he did all that. Anyway, so welcome to the space. This is actually my first space that I've started since I came back on X. And I've waited this long because the last time I did my own space from this account, I got banned. And I don't want to say why because I don't want to get banned again. But when I got reinstated for the first time in January last year, I went live immediately and I did the space, and everybody said that's why I got banned. So let's just try and keep it disciplined. We're going to keep it dialed in. I'm locked in. This is going to be very thoughtful and a very measured space, and we're going to keep it cordial and calm because I don't want to get banned again. That's why I kind of wanted to wait a little bit to heat up, or rather maybe to cool down, actually, not heat up. That's always my problem is I get too hot. I'm heating up way too much. There's no limit. It keeps getting hotter and then it just blows up. So I had to take a couple months to cool down, actually, rather. But I've done a few spaces. You know, I've been on some of the Mario spaces, and I think I did one with Suleiman. But anyway, this is my first one, so welcome. Pretty good listenership. We got 3,500. Wow, 3,500 people in here already. I just started it like 5 minutes ago, and kind of on a whim. So we'll see how many people we could get in here on this Saturday night. Hang on, this. I have a new pet. I don't know. I haven't told anybody, but I have a pet, and he's really annoying. Maybe I'll post a picture of him later. But anyway, I have this new pet. He's in the other room. He's scratching under the door. I'm like, hey, shut the fuck up. I'm trying to do a Twitter space. What do you even call these anymore? Are these like X spaces or Twitter spaces? I'm not sure on the lingo. Anyway, so we're gonna get into it. Like I said, I'll just give you guys the background on this. So I don't know the Petersons. I've never had an interaction with them. I've never talked with them. I don't even know anything about Michaela Peterson. I don't know anything about her. And I haven't had any contact with either of them, the dad or the daughter. Just so you understand, there's no history here. But today, Michaela Peterson comes on Twitter and she responded to a post by Dr. Lupus, who's great. She's a friend of mine. I met her at AFPAC 4. She's very lovely in person, lovely family, and one of the best posters on here. And anyway, so Dr. Lupus posted a couple days ago about how if you look at all the porn companies, they all have Jewish owners. OnlyFans, MindGeek, the gay dating app Grinder, and some other ones I forget. But basically, like all the porn companies, the owners are all ethnically Jewish. And so she pointed that out the other day. And by the way, I don't even know necessarily what's wrong with pointing that out. I suppose I understand what people are getting at on the other side. I don't think it's logical. And here's why. Jewish people are Jewish. They follow the Jewish religion. And even if someone who is ethnically Jewish doesn't follow the Jewish religion, their ancestors did. And the reason why it matters that all of the people that run the porn companies are ethnically Jewish is because many observant religious Jews don't believe that pornography is immoral. So ideas actually have consequences, and ideas over millennia have consequences. So, for example, there was an event not too long ago where Dennis Prager and Charlie Kirk sat down. I think it was at a college campus. And Charlie Kirk is, of course, at least nominally, I'm not going to speak to what's in his heart, but he says that I believe he's a Protestant Christian. And to his credit, he has become a lot more socially conservative lately. Again, I'm not going to speak to how authentic his belief is, but at least nominally, he's far more socially conservative, far more religious than he was 5 years ago when my people were chastising him during the Groyper War. And anyway, so on one side of the stage, you have Charlie Kirk. He's a Christian. On the other side of the stage, you have Dennis Prager. And somebody comes up and asks a question about pornography. And Dennis Prager, who is, of course, a religious observant Jew, ethnically Jewish, he says that if conservatives were to go out there and tell people that it is a sin to masturbate or to use pornography, he said we would lose people. He said, of course, it is not always immoral to masturbate or to use pornography. This is Dennis Prager. He says he believes in a reasonable God, and I'm quoting, this is directly. He says he believes in a reasonable God that would allow for that in certain circumstances. And this is a theological difference between Christians and Jews. Of course, some religious Jews would argue against that. Some religious Jews would argue for that. And there are a lot of the secular Jews, of course, are atheists. Many of them are hedonistic. They're the authors of some of the most degenerate movements, sexual movements in the history of Western civilization, transgenderism and homosexuality, all that stuff. And anyway, so when Dr. Lupus tweets out that all the porn companies are owned by people that are Jewish, I actually don't see a problem with that. One, it's a fact. It's just factual. It'd be one thing if it was some kind of slanderous lie. Then you could say, well, that's misinformation. Then you could say, well, so somebody is distorting the truth to create a particular narrative. But if it's factual, one, then what's the problem? And then people might say, let's steel man the opposition. The opposition, of course, would say something like, well, why does it matter? Maybe it's factual. Why does it matter? But they actually aren't interested in the answer because, well, I think you could very easily say if all the porn companies are owned by ethnic Jews, maybe that suggests something about Jewish people or the Jewish religion, which the Jewish people have been shaped by over thousands of years, because the Jewish community has only become secularized relatively recently. Jewish people have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And it's only recently that they've become extremely secular. So perhaps the Jewish religion has molded them over time, and maybe that's why there's this overrepresentation. I think it also poses an interesting question. I think it suggests that if we had a society that was run by Christians who abhor, it says it in black and white in the Bible, who abhor any form of promiscuity, any form of adultery or non-marital, non-heterosexual sex. If society were in the hands of Christians, would you have this? Of course, it's only in an open society. It's only in a pluralistic, tolerant society where various factions with their different values can rise and fall. And in some cases, like in the case of Jewish people, rise to such peaks, rise to such altitudes within society that they can run Hollywood and they can run the porn industry and so on. And they can, with their different values, shape the country. I think that's a fair question. I don't think there's anything in there that is loaded up with irrational hatred or, as Jordan Peterson said, willful ignorance or something. I think that's actually just logical. It may make people uncomfortable, but it's logical. And I think it's just fair. These are fair questions. And anyway, so putting that aside for a moment, Dr. Lupus tweets this out. And if somebody wants to send that to me, I'll put it up in the Jumbotron so people can see it. I may have to just go in and find it. I'm not prepared. I should have put all these links together beforehand. But I'll put this in the Jumbotron here. Here's one of them. So Michaela Peterson sees this tweet by Dr. Lupus where she says that all the porn companies are run by Jewish people. And she says, this is anti-Semitism and this needs to be censored. Here it is. I'll read out the tweet exactly as it is. And I'm going to put it up in the Jumbotron so everybody can see it. If you missed it, I'm tagging it at the top of the space. Michaela Peterson, daughter of Jordan Peterson, says, I cannot believe I'm seeing Nazis in my lifetime that didn't grow up in a cave. She's an MD. She's talking about Dr. Lupus. Spewing cherry-picked data while completely ignoring facts, like almost 30% of Nobel Peace Prize winners are Jewish. Maybe there does need to be some more content moderation. And this post is just like so unbelievable. And here's the thing. I don't have a problem at all with people that disagree with me. I really don't. And I have a lot of friends that disagree with me. I have friends like Laura Loomer. We have fought viciously over Trump recently. And I still consider her a friend. I'm still able to joke with her and I still admire many things about her. It's fine. So I actually don't have a problem with people that disagree. And people that have actually logical disagreements, that's also fine. I'm willing to admit if I've heard an argument that if I hear an argument that I have not heard before, and I think it sounds intriguing, I say, wow, I'm humble enough to say, I never thought of it that way. That's very interesting. But this is such an obtuse and disingenuous, it's not even a counter argument. So Dr. Lupus says, the founders of Grindr, Tinder, the porn websites, OnlyFans, they're all Jewish. These are just facts, and like I said, I think it's actually interesting to know that. I doubt many people know that. And I also think it's an extremely pertinent and salient question because we all can recognize that the country is becoming worse in extremely tangible ways. You can all imagine what I'm talking about economically, these wars that are going on, culturally, socially, you name it. And one of the ways in which the country is deteriorating is that we all know there's a problem with gender and sex. And it's not just the transgenders. It's the real crisis. It's chemical, it's environmental. Men don't know how to be men. The masculinity was not transmitted to them culturally by their fathers. In many cases, there is a loss of testosterone between several generations. People point to microplastics as maybe one of the factors in that. There's a problem with women. Women are deferring childbirth. Women are not participating in child rearing. They're giving up their kids to daycare. Women are on birth control. Their preferences are changing. We know that men and women are not getting together. They're not getting married. They're not having kids. That's why there's a fertility crisis. There's all sorts of dissatisfaction between the sexes. There's this political polarization. The men are becoming very right-wing. The women are becoming very left-wing. So we know there's a lot of problems. And we also know that sex is so much looser and freer and more liberal than it was a few generations ago. We know that there are deep-seated problems. You have what people call hookup culture. You've got hypergamy. You've got the proliferation of pornography. It's ubiquitous on the internet, which is causing dysfunction in many young males who discover it at a young age. And the list goes on and on. And so when you look at these kinds of problems, among others, the salient question is, well, who is responsible? If there is wokeism, if there is this liberalization occurring, whatever you want to call it, I think the question that, and Jordan Peterson has been asked this question, as has Chris Rufo and others. We talk about wokeism. We talk about this vague thing, this vague liberalizing force, this force that is acting as a catalyst that is causing all the social change. And we conceive of it as happening from above and having directionality and being intended. So what is it and who is it? These are salient questions. So might that be a good place to start? We all know digital internet pornography is a pestilence. It's a huge part of the problem. Cannot be overstated what a big problem it is. Might it be a good place to look to see, well, gee, who's running the porn companies? Porn is a big problem. Well, it doesn't come out of nowhere. OnlyFans is like a second wave of internet porn. You have like internet porn like Pornhub and regular porn. Then you have OnlyFans, where girls turn 18 years old and they want to start selling their body on OnlyFans. And it's seen as like a side hustle. It's like the gig economy equivalent for pornography. It's like the Uber of porn. You know, how many people are signing up to be cab drivers 15 years ago? But how many people are going to do Uber in their spare time? They got a car, they download the app, they want to make a little money on the side, but they don't want to be committed. They're a subcontractor. OnlyFans is the same thing. OnlyFans is doing to porn what Uber did to cabs. But it's horrible because, you know, cab drivers, well, you know, that's fine. People want to drive around. But we don't want more people making porn. We don't want to take the stigma away. We don't want to make it accessible to daughters. Would you want your daughter to find pornography more accessible and less shameful? Of course not. So maybe that's a good place to start, is to say, well, who brought this into our home? Who brought this into our country? Who brought this into our world? Who built it? Who maintains it? Who owns it? Who can profit from such a thing? And when you start to and then you look at the people that are running it and they all have something in common, that's not you're telling me that's not a relevant fact? We're supposed to simply not notice? Or if we notice, we're supposed to simply not acknowledge? Why? If we notice and acknowledge it, we're cherry picking. We're cherry picking if we don't acknowledge some totally unrelated statistic. She says, Dr. Lupus is cherry picking the data that shows that all the porn companies are run by Jews. But that's cherry picking because she doesn't mention all the Jewish Nobel Prize laureates. It's like, okay, so what? Do we have to look at all the Jewish garbage men? Do we have to look at all the Jewish people that are farmers? I mean, what does one have to do with the other? And I understand what she's saying, but logically speaking, it's a complete non sequitur. It does not follow. All the porn companies are run by Jews. Okay, but Jews also are a large percentage of Nobel Prize winners. Okay, it does not follow. So she says, the data is being cherry picked, but that's really kind of the least egregious thing here. And like I said, you want to disagree, that's fine. But that's not an argument, okay? Not to go Stefan Malamim here, but that's not an argument, okay? You must construct additional arguments. You are out of pylons. You must construct additional arguments. There's no argument here. But what's worse, whatever. We could tackle that some other time, whatever. The most egregious thing about the post is she says, well, if you acknowledge that all the porn companies are run by Jews, you're a Nazi. I can't believe. And then there's this like sputtering. That's always the tactic. It's never, because there are neo-Nazis. Like there are. I'm not one of them. There are neo-Nazis. There are people that have, they want to revive National Socialism. There are people that idolize Hitler. That's real. I don't hate Hitler. I don't hate anybody. I love everybody. But there are people that legitimately, you call them, there's a philosopher named Savitri Devi. She's called an esoteric Hitlerist. She wrote a book called, what is it? I forget the name of it. But she says that Hitler is a man against time. And it's very interesting, actually. It involves like Hinduism and stuff. So, I mean, that's out there. It would be one thing if these people just were like descriptive and just said, well, this idea fits into this category. But it's always this like hysterical sputtering. I cannot believe I'm seeing Nazis in my lifetime that didn't grow up in a cave. Oh, please. And this is like where you get these are the same people, these are the same conservatives that for years say, oh, well, the left will just call everything they don't like racist. The left will call everything that they don't like bigotry. But then they will turn around and do the exact same thing. And people will sputter and say, but, in this case, Dr. Lupus is calling out Jewish people. It's like, okay, so what? Are Jewish people God? Are they above criticism? Or are they like any other group and therefore can be criticized? Can we talk about them as a discrete, distinct group? As a discrete category? Is that not allowed? Why not? We can talk about white people. We can talk about women. We can talk about black people. Why can't we talk about Jewish people? We can talk about the evangelicals. We can talk about the white working class. We can talk about, why can't we talk about Jewish people? Why is that off limits? Why is that different than anything else? If I go out and say, I live in Chicago, if I go out and say that black people, adolescent black males from the age of 15 to 21 are committing almost all of the carjackings in the past 4 years, am I a real racist? Am I a real Klansman in the flesh from a cave? No, of course not. It's factual, it's statistical, it's a problem. And if we want to understand these political problems, well, we need information. Okay, and I know this may sound like really straightforward and like dumb and obvious, but you'd have to slow it down when people get hysterical. You have to hit the slow-mo button and slow it down when people start to freak out and say, and they point and sputter and say, Nazis in my lifetime. Like, let's just slow down and let's see what we're talking about. If somebody got up and said, well, they idolize Hitler and they want concentration camps, you'd say, yeah, fuck that. That is Nazis. That's a real neo-Nazi. That's terrible. But that's not what's being said here. But people always freak out. It's like there's one group still that is shielded from criticism by these types of words. And Candace Owens has talked a lot about this also, because Candace Owens is black, and black people have been criticized lately by conservatives. Conservatives have become a lot more willing to criticize not just Black Lives Matter, but also talk about, for example, human biodiversity. Steve Saylor was just on Tucker Carlson. And so conservatives are totally willing, especially lately, to talk about blacks as a distinct group and criticize them as a group and talk about those problems. But then when the criticism comes to, for example, the state of Israel and the treatment of the Palestinians by the Jews, or the treatment of the Christians by the Israelis, or, for example, how many of the porn companies are owned by Jewish people, then suddenly they want to turn around and say, well, that's off limits, that's anti-Semitic, you're a Nazi. That's just ridiculous. We as a society need to move on from that. And, we could get into reasons why, but let's just say very simply, Jewish people are extremely influential and powerful in our country. So there's this idea that it's punching down, that they deserve this special protection, that it's warranted because they have a special status as victims, but it couldn't be further from the truth. Let's just get that straight. Jews are among the wealthiest ethnic groups in the United States. On average, highest income earners. If you look at in terms of the work they do, they're almost all doing white collar work. There was a big exhaustive study that was done by Pew Research a few years ago. You can look at the data. They're one of the wealthiest, one of the most well-off groups in the country. And then when you break it down by the critical elite industries, Hollywood, finance, banking, media, government, they're overly represented there. When you look at the elite academic institutions, the Ivy Leagues, for example, some Ivy League schools, Jews are 25% of the student body. They're 2% of the country, 25% of the student body. And this is almost preempting one of the arguments we'll talk about in a moment. They say, well, that's just because they're so high IQ. It's like, well, first of all, let's talk about it. First of all, let's first notice and acknowledge that it's going on and is conspicuous, not suspicious, but conspicuous. And then let's actually talk about it. Is it because they have a high IQ? It always, the thing is, it always moves so quickly. It's like you notice something and they say you're an anti-Semite. And then you say, well, why? I'm just noticing it. And then they say, well, the reason it is that way is because something, something, something. It's like, okay, well, let's slow down here and stop moving the goalposts. Let's first establish that we can, one, notice, acknowledge it, and that's okay. And then two, it's actually an open-ended question as to how the particular situation became the way it is. Like, for example, all the porn companies being owned by Jews. It actually is a question. And it's legit. It's a legitimate conversation to talk about it. Same with why some Ivy League institutions have a student body that's 25% Jewish. It's actually not a foregone conclusion that it's absolutely because of merit and there's no nepotism involved. Legacy admissions. There's no institutional capture. Like, that's actually not a foregone conclusion. To assume it is, that's ideological. And anyway, but we're getting ahead. So she says, well, you're a Nazi. And then, and here's the best part. I saved the best for last. She says, well, we need content moderation. Why? So now, by the way, what is their whole philosophy? I thought the whole philosophy of Jordan Peterson and the daughter and Shapiro and the rest, and Dave Rubin, was this is the West. And we talk about ideas and we don't care if it hurts your feelings. I'm sorry, what's the slogan? Facts don't care about your feelings. So the problem is what? You don't like the fact? You thought it was cherry picked because it didn't include some other random fact about the Nobel Prize? So now the people that have beaten us to death for years with this, like, facts don't care about your feelings, free speech, free marketplace of ideas, don't burn this book. Dave Rubin literally wrote a book. Don't burn this book. Hey, I'm a liberal, but I'll still sit down and talk to you. Okay, that's this crowd. Now they're coming out and saying, moderator, mods, admins, can we get an admin in here? Maybe we need to censor. Maybe we need to censor ideas. And this is the double standard. This is the blatant, glaring, increasingly obvious double standard that is at the center of the entire conservative movement. And this is their problem. And this explains their war with me. Okay? Because I'm actually not a bad guy. And we'll get into that too. But maybe I'm a little crude, and I have like a raunchy sense of humor, but I'm not actually like an evil human being. I'm not like a genocidal maniac or whatever. I'm a Catholic. I'm a patriot. I just want the country to be correct in all the ways that most people probably agree, most conservatives. I don't like crime. I want people to be educated. I want men and women to get married and have families. I think the women should raise their babies. I think they should stay at home and raise their babies. So I'm not like some lunatic or whatever. But the reason that I have this war with the conservatives is because of this double standard, which is totally unavoidable. It's an impasse, which is at the middle of it, which is that clearly we have a Jewish elite in this country. And we can talk about, what it is and how it operates and how powerful it is. People like to say, well, maybe there's an Israel lobby, but other governments are influential. Yeah, that's true. And people say, well, maybe Jewish people are influential, but they're not omnipotent. Yeah, I agree with that. And, we could play that game. But it's like, it's obviously it's true. Obviously, they run the conservative movement. And obviously, the reason that is the one third rail that you still can't touch, it has a lot to do with that fact itself. That they are powerful is why you can't say they are. Those things are deeply related, of course. For example, last week, that Lomez guy who happens to be Jewish, Jonathan Kieperman, he's the passenger press guy. He got doxxed by The Guardian. He publishes Steve Saylor. Jonathan Kieperman, Lomez, he tweeted a couple weeks ago, or I think it was last week, he said, it was after the Biden debate. He said, Biden is clearly not the president. So who is in charge? Nobody knows. And I replied to the tweet. I said, well, it's Jews. Jews are in charge. Oh, you don't know? You don't know that? Here, I'll volunteer an answer. I'll take a guess. Let me take a stab at it. Let me do a little shot in the dark. I think it's Jews, and I'm being, I'm not, obviously, if I were to phrase it in an extremely serious and technical way, I would not say it quite like that. But, but Twitter is a microblog. So he says, well, who runs the country? We don't even know. And I said, oh, it's Jews. Yeah, obviously. Like, hello. Who do you think invented cancel culture, And anyway, so I said that, and the post got suppressed by Twitter. So the post got removed. Twitter says we're limiting visibility on the post because it may violate the community guidelines. Why? I said one word. The one word I said was Jews. And they said this violates the community guidelines on hate speech. How is that hateful? It's a word. It's literally one word. So then you understand it's like contextual. So it's against the community guidelines to say in response to someone else asking who runs the country, Jews. That's a hateful contextual reply. In that context, the word is hate speech. According to the very liberal now, and by liberal I mean permissive, Elon Musk owned X platform. Not only that, so the post was suppressed, and then it was banned in Germany. Under German law, the post was permanently removed from X. And I've said this before. Now, if I get banned for saying that Jews run the country, that doesn't prove that Jews run the country. That's not actually like proof. And I would never argue that, oh, if you're banned from saying something, that means that group runs the country. But it is a good heuristic. Okay, it is a good rule of thumb, and it does follow that if you are not permitted to say something in almost any public or private setting, if you're not permitted to say that a certain group runs the country, it's a good chance that they do. I would never say, oh, it absolutely means in every case that they do, but it is a good heuristic that if you say somebody's in charge and then there's a lot of consequences for saying that, well, maybe they are in charge. And anyway, so that is the contradiction that's at the center of it, because we all know that the Republican Party in particular is within the grasp of the Israel lobby. I mean, and just take a look, just like with the porn companies, you could do it with the conservative media companies. Fox News and New York Post are both owned by Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch is a close personal friend of Benjamin Netanyahu and has contributed to Netanyahu's prime minister campaign and volunteers his condo for Netanyahu to stay in when he visits London. So, coincidentally, Fox News and New York Post are very pro-Israel. Breitbart is, the editor-in-chief there is a guy named Joel Pollack. Joel Pollack isn't even an American. He was born in South Africa. He's Jewish. He studied Jewish studies at university. He converted his South African wife to Judaism, and he immigrated here, and he runs Breitbart. And Breitbart was founded by a lot of Jewish Zionists. You could go and look it up. There's a famous article, now infamous. It says, born in America, conceived in Israel, the story of Breitbart. And it's a picture of Andrew Breitbart, Bibi Netanyahu, Jim Hoft from the Gateway Pundit. So they're very pro-Israel too. And there was a article years ago by Joe Bernstein from BuzzFeed. There was this big leak of emails from Bannon and from Milo back in 2016. And you literally have emails where they say, yeah, go in on Muslims, go in on, this group and that group. Oh, but don't talk about Jewish people. So that's Breitbart. Then you have Daily Wire. Who runs Daily Wire? It's Jeremy Boring and Shapiro. And Jeremy Boring is one of those dispensationalist evangelical Christians that believes that, Protestants have to worship Israel. And Shapiro's, of course, turbo's rabid Zionist Jewish. Then you've got Blaze TV. It's run by Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck broke down in tears about how they offered him citizenship in Israel. And he's crying about, oh my, I can't believe I would get the honor. Oh, I want to die and go to heaven because they offer me citizenship. This is crazy. And it goes on and on. And this is like Blaze TV, Breitbart, Fox News, Daily Wire, PragerU. The CEO of Prager University was in the IDF. She was in the intelligence unit. What is it, 8200? She was literally an IDF intelligence agent. She's the CEO of Prager University. So it's like, just take a sample of the, and so, of course, in the conservative movement, they go on and on. Free speech, free marketplace of ideas. Don't burn this book. The left calls anyone that disagrees with them a bigot. We should be able to criticize immigration and crime and so on and make people uncomfortable, even if it's a little racial. And that doesn't make us bigots. But then somebody stands up and says, hey, guys, that's great and all. But if we're America first and we're patriotic and we're Christians, then why is this whole movement run by people that are not Christians that support a foreign country? And when we talk about it, we get canceled and we get called bigots and we get called white supremacists. Like, so do you understand? This is the contradiction that's at the center. So it's such a gift when somebody like Michaela Peterson says that, because it really just lays it bare. It's like, hang on, wait a second. Aren't you people the champions of free speech? Now you want to shut it down? Now you want the mods to come in and ban everybody? Now they're calling for the old regime on Twitter to come back and for everybody to be censored? Why? Because somebody pointed out an inconvenient fact about Jewish people? Because that's all it is. It wasn't a call to violence. It wasn't criminal in nature. It wasn't even what anyone would call hate speech. It'd be different if there were all the statistics and then at the bottom it said, F these people. It didn't say that. It just said, hey, here's an interesting pattern. And they say, well, bring in the community guidelines. That's get your hate speech off our campus, Trigglypuff. So anyway, so Michaela Peterson tweets that. She says, oh, it's Nazis. We got to bring in the moderators and blah, blah. And I replied, I said, you and your father are complete frauds. I said, it's all free speech and open debate until one particular group gets criticized even a little bit. Then you are the first ones calling for censorship. Total hypocrisy. We see right through you. And she replied to me. Let me see if I grab that reply. She quote tweets that. Michaela Peterson, I'm going to, which one did she quote tweet actually? This one. No, not that one. This one. So then I replied to another one. She said the same thing, basically. She said, yes, I think the Nazis on X equating Jews with rats and using hashtags like filth should have more content moderation. No, I'm not retracting. Really brave, by the way. It's really brave take. Everybody knows that it's really controversial to say something like, Nazis should be censored. What a hero. Can we get a round of applause? Can we get a round of applause in this space? Can we get some applause emojis for her bravery and courage? How could she say something so brave and so courageous? A true martyr. Like, what a hero. A round of applause, please, for Michaela Peterson, because she said that Nazis should be censored and she will not back down. Let's get a round of applause. Woo-hoo! Yeah! Let's go. Wow, the Joan of Arc of our time. Do not say that we are living in the time of weak men creating bad times. These are strong men delivering the good times, taking a stand on the critical issues. I will not back down. I will not yield. You will not say that Jewish people run the porn companies. I think that should be censored. Yeah, I said it. And I'm not backing down. What about it? What are you going to do, huh? I only have the ADL and Ben Shapiro and the U.S. government, the state of Israel behind me. Anyway, so she says, yeah, I'm not backing down. Wow, she's like one of these female Jedi in Star Wars. She's like that boss bitch in the Ahsoka show. She's like riding her motorcycle. I don't have time to play princess. I got to ride my motorcycle and chop up some bad guys because I'm a fucking punk bitch and I'm tough. It's classic. She should get her own Disney show. She should get her own Disney show because she's such a badass. We need an action figure of Michaela Peterson. She'll have some kind of play action where she disavows anti-Semitism. Press a button on her press a button on her ass on the action figure. It says, "I will not back down. W Jews." Let's go. This is great. Anyway. Anyway, but so she says that. And she says, people are comparing Jews to rats. I'm like, okay, your dad literally called me a rat last week. When I said that Jews control the country, Jordan Peterson called me a psychopathic rat. That is so uncalled for. Could you imagine if somebody was like, hey, who runs the country? And somebody was like, said something else. Let's say somebody said, oh, the UN. And you're like, you fucking rat. The United Nations runs the country. How you fucking rat? Like, what? That is so unhinged. I'm not even being sarcastic. That is so completely unhinged and insane. Could you imagine literally any other answer making somebody that mad? If you said, who runs the country? Who's even running the government? Nobody knows. And somebody said, oh, I don't know, it's the Chinese. Could you imagine any scenario where somebody's like, you fucking rat, psychopathic rat? Like, what? Calm down. It's not a big deal. Relax. Yes, Jews run the government. Let us reason together. Where's your arguments? Debate me in the free marketplace of ideas. Don't call. That's an ad hominem. Mods, ad hominem attack. Let's have that stricken from the record. Let's have some arguments. This is a realm of ideas. No bullying. Okay, bullies. Like the Ben Shapiro book, Bullies. Yeah, he is the expert on that. Anyway, so I said, so she says, oh, people are comparing Jews to rats. I said, bruh, your dad called me a rat last week. I said, thank you for exposing yourself, revealing who you really worked for. Spoiler alert. By that, I meant Jewish people. I said, both of you freaks should be deported to Israel since you love it so much, they can have you. And she replies, you sound mad you weren't born a Jew, which is just like, do you understand how none of these replies make any sense? Like, once you realize that all of these people are in on it, like Jordan Peterson going to Israel and meeting Benjamin Netanyahu, working for Ben Shapiro, this guy is a shill, okay? This guy is corrupt. He made a deal. He took some kind of deal. There is something going on that we're not aware of. He knows more than he's letting on. Because let me describe the situation to you. Over here, Americans are getting together and they're starting to realize that something is not adding up. People like me, and I know Dr. Lupus isn't from America, but people like her and people like Lucas Gage and whoever, they're coming together and they're saying, I think something is awry here. Something is out of place. There's a double standard. They do seem to run the porn companies. And hey, they do seem to run the conservative media companies. And, why are we sending all this money to Israel? And even though the public doesn't support it, and why does the ADL have a hotline to every social media company? And why is Elon Musk at Auschwitz with Ben Shapiro? All this stuff. And then somebody like Jordan Peterson and his daughter come in with these weird, they're calling us Nazis for this line of inquiry, calling us rats. They say things like, oh, you sound like you're mad because you weren't born a Jew. What does that even mean? It's just such a weird thing to say, such a weird reply. What does one have to do with the other? We're over here noticing that Jewish people run the porn companies. She's saying you're a Nazi and you'd need to be banned from Twitter for saying it. We're saying, yeah, that's a little hypocritical, wouldn't you say? And then she comes in and says, oh, you're just mad you weren't born Jewish. What? And they say that we're obsessed. They say that we have the obsession. It's like, I'm obsessed with America. That makes me concerned about our problems. You investigate the problems and you start to notice some troubling things. But these are the people that are obsessed. Oh, you're mad that you weren't born a Jew. What? What does that even mean? That's such a bizarre thing to say. And for what it's worth, I'm a Catholic. So I really have no envy for that group. I think that group is in peril. I think they're in spiritual peril. Because as Jesus said, the blood is on their hands, or I guess was Pontius Pilate, that the blood would be on their hands and all of their descendants. And there is a sort of special enmity there because of what happened at the crucifixion. And the Catholic Church is very clear about that. You know, prior to Vatican II, we said we pray for the perfidious Jews at the that's not me, that's not Hitler, that's not 4chan. That was the Catholic Church for thousands of years until Vatican II at the Easter Mass or Good Friday. Or I guess it was Holy Thursday. I don't know what day they say that, but they used to say that during Easter. And anyway, so she says, well, you're mad you're not born a Jew. It's like, no, I'm actually pretty glad I was born American, and I'm pretty glad I was born Catholic. And then I made a dig at her. I'm like, oh, you glaze the Jews harder than you glaze Andrew Tate, which is, that's a cheap shot, but we know these people are really annoying. And anyway, then this is what I want to get into, the main event. So I don't really care about Michaela Peterson. I mean, whatever. She's obviously a total degenerate, like all e-girls. I mean, you look at like the faces she makes in these pictures, and it's like you could already clock her. You know what I'm talking about? You see some of these pictures of her. I don't care if she slept with Andrew Tate or not. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. I'll take her word for it. But you look at these like sultry faces she's making, and that every guy can clock that immediately. It's one. People always ask me. They say, "What's an e-girl?" Because I say, "No e-girls. You can't date e-girls. They're bad news." And people always say, "Well, what is an e-girl?" Because every girl at this point has like an Instagram or whatever. And it's like if you look at a picture and a girl is making a sultry expression like that, she's doing one of those poses or whatever with their hair, and that's how you know. It's like it's written all over her face. It's like, bruh, this is a classic e-girl. She is ran through. I think she had a kid out of wedlock or something, right? She's a single mom. Anyway, I'm not going to attack her personally, but it is what it is. I don't know anything about her. I'm sure she's a very nice lady. She has all the wrong opinions, and she's probably extremely ignorant, but I'm sure she's a very nice lady. I'm sure she's very sweet and has friends, and it's great. But no, I'm not mad that I wasn't born Jewish. We're just kind of collectively noticing that Jewish people have a lot of influence, and we're starting to ask questions about it. We'd like to not be banned on Twitter. It's really that simple. Anyway, the main event, Jordan Peterson comes for me. And this guy, I don't know what his problem is. Like, I don't actually hate him at all. I have no hatred for him. I have no animosity for him. I know that he is a shill. Like, he obviously pulls his punches on Jews in Israel. And we know that. I posted this earlier. I'll never forget, very early on, somebody asked him, because he's a big fan of Solzhenitsyn, somebody asked him about the essay that Solzhenitsyn wrote called 200 Years Together, and it's about the Jews in Russia and how there's a lot of tension, to say the least, between the Jews and the Russians in the lead up to the Russian Revolution, of which the Jews spearheaded the Russian Revolution. They were the Bolsheviks, they were the Red Army, Lenin, Trotsky, Kamenev, Zinoviev, so many of the people that were in the early Bolshevik government who did so much of the initial reign of terror, and especially against the Romanov family and against the kulaks, the farmers. It was carried out by Jews who did have an axe to grind against the Russians. And that axe to grind against the Russians because of the pogroms and the Pale Settlement. And I don't know if it was Alexander II or III who was so-called anti-Semitic. So they had a big axe to grind with the Russians. And that was their revenge. Many people see that as their revenge. And that's what 200 Years Together is about. And anyway, so Jordan Peterson's a big fan of Solzhenitsyn, and somebody says, what are your thoughts on 200 Years Together? What are your thoughts on the fact that the Bolsheviks had this Jewish representation and, the idea that they were carrying out a vendetta against the ethnic Russians who were Christian? What do you think about that? And Peterson literally declined to answer. He said, well, I'm just not going to answer that. They said, what's your response to the Jewish question? He said, I will not answer it. And, when somebody declines to answer, that betrays knowledge. When people were asking Charlie Kirk about the USS Liberty 5 years ago, he answered like an ignoramus because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He just spat out I doubt he even knew what it was, but, once his people told him, he just spat out the line and said, oh, it was an accident. And they got paid and, you know, is totally fine. And he would just answer and he would take the shill line. When somebody says, I'm not going to answer, what does that say? It means they know the answer, but if they say it, there will be a problem. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll get canceled. Not necessarily. Could be, but maybe they won't say it because they think people aren't ready for it. Or, you know, there could be a number of reasons, but if somebody says, no, I refuse to answer it, it's because they know the answer, and they also know that if they say the answer, they're not going to like the outcome for whatever reason. And let's just be fair, and let's just say we don't necessarily know the reason. Maybe it's because he would be canceled. Maybe it's because there's an ideological reason he doesn't want to say it. And I would actually lean towards the latter explanation. You know, because Peterson is very interested in like totalitarianism. He's like one of these humanists, you know, one of these individualist humanist types. And so he's fascinated by the, you know, so-called collectivism. And he believes that fascism and communism are both different branches of totalitarianism or collectivism. And he believes that the horrors of World War II were caused by this collectivism, the erasure of the individual, and these radical ideologies, the excesses of the right and the left, which both kind of meet in the middle in a way as collectivism. And so this is actually the same kind of mindset that the post-World War II order was created out of. It was this philosophy that said, never again. And of course, the greatest horror of World War II was not the 90 million other people that died. It was the 6 million Jews that died at the gas chambers of the Holocaust. So it was this mantra of never again, never again, never again can we have another Holocaust. And, you know, and all that other stuff that also happened, you know, who fucking cares? But never again can we have another, the thing that actually matters, the people that actually matter, you know, fuck all the Russians that died and everybody else. But never again, the main thing is that the Holocaust can never happen again. And so out of that, you get this idea, you get all kinds of literature like the authoritarian personality, and you get the open society. You get all this stuff where they basically say that at the root of fascism and communism is like strong fathers, the authoritarian personality. At the root of fascism and communism is nationalism. It's collectivism. It's a chauvinism. It's racial supremacy. It's religious exclusionism, you know, or exclusionary religious belief, as opposed to pluralism or, you know, something that's more indifferent, you know, like perennialism or something. So they say that's at the root of all of it. So for us to never have a Holocaust again, we got to get rid of all that. We got to get rid of racism. We got to get rid of sexism. We got to get rid of white supremacy. We got to get rid of this kind of over-the-top Christianity, and we have to make a extremely liberal, open, tolerant, pluralistic society. That's the only way that we can never repeat the horrors of World War II and specifically the Holocaust. And I think that Peterson is in that ideological camp, and I think that's why he says, I don't want to answer, because he knows it's real. What I mean by that is he knows that, like, yes, it takes two to tango. Like, Jewish people did create a lot of the animosity against them with their behavior. They did, just like now. But if he were to say that, well, you know, like, that's dangerous. And in a sense, that's kind of like the same ideology of the ADL, like where the ADL comes in and says, well, you can't criticize Jewish people because if you do, it could cause another Holocaust. Well, you can't make jokes about Jewish people because if you do, it'll cause another Holocaust. You know, I forget if it's the SPLC or the ADL, but they actually have a pyramid. They have like they have a model for this. And at the bottom of the model is like anti-Semitic jokes. It's a pyramid. And at the top of it, it's literally the Holocaust. I'm not making this up. It's one of their educational materials. They create a pyramid and they say that it flows upward. It starts with, stereotypes, jokes, you know, otherizing marginal groups. And at the very top, it's genocide. And it's like, so So the ADL, SPLC, the George Soros and the Open Society Foundation, and Peterson, they all really have that same ideology. That's the irony. For all the talk about, the World Economic Forum and the UN, they all really have the same ideology. And anyway, so maybe that's why I didn't want to say it, whatever. But so I posted that clip, and Jordan Peterson, and anyway, what I was trying to say before is I don't really hate Peterson. I know that he is this way. I because of that clip and because of all of his content since then, he obviously never talks about that. Like there's another famous meme where he does a YouTube video and it's like, this is my message to Christians. And he's making that serious face. And then he has another one, message to Muslims. And everyone's like, hey, I think you're missing one. He's got a series and it's like, message to Christians, message to Muslims, blank. It's like, hey, man, where's the message to Jews? And, then there's the other clip where he said someone called him rabbi and he starts crying. He's like, someone called me rabbi and, that's really something, that's really something, bucko. When someone calls you, it's like, dude, why are you crying? And so we know that's how he is, like, whatever, fine. Like I said, if people disagree with me, I don't care. Like, yes, he's not a Christian. He believes that Jesus was an archetype. He's one of these, psychological people. He believes in Carl Jung and the collective unconscious. Fine. Whatever. Like, I think his content is interesting. Like, I've watched a lot of his content over the years. A lot of my friends are really into him or were really into him up to a certain point. Fine. Like, I don't care if people disagree. And I don't hate the guy, even though I think he's a shill for Israel. And like I said, ideologically, he's like a secular humanist. It's fine. But he's got this crazy beef with me. He's like calling me a rat. And then he quote tweeted me today with this whole like rant. And I'm going to put it up in the Jumbotron. So, of course, Michaela said, well, Jews are being called rats. And I said, that's kind of ironic. Your dad called me a rat. So Jordan, I just linked it in the Jumbotron. Jordan quote tweets me and says, I apologize for calling you a rat. Rats are just animals. They happen to be an enemy of mankind. So they are like you in that regard. But they are merely acting on instinct. Whereas you are motivated by a willful ignorance so deep that it's kind of a miracle, in combination with a profound malevolence. So I was unfair to the rats, hence my apology. Which it's actually a really nasty thing to say. I don't take offense because I just find it all so amusing. I just think it's all so fun. But it is. But if I had a more of a thin skin, it's actually a really nasty, mean thing to say, which really contradicts his whole ideology and is really actually his whole profession. I don't know how somebody could claim to be an individualist and talk about the horrors of collectivism and otherizing the marginal people and all this, and then you call someone a rat. And then someone's like, yeah, that's a little hypocritical. So when Jews are called rats, well, that's Nazism and that needs to be banned immediately. And that's a form of marginalizing that leads to a Holocaust. But you call me a rat and that's fine. And then you double down and say, you're worse than a rat because a rat is only an enemy of mankind out of instinct. You're an enemy of mankind because you're a piece of shit. It's like, how do you not see the contradiction? How do you not see the hypocrisy there? So otherizing people, marginalizing people, stereotyping, dehumanizing, like that's only wrong when it happens to the most powerful race in the world right now. But when you do it to someone who's been persecuted by the government, an individual who just got unbanned on Twitter recently, who's 25 years old, well, that's okay because he's a racist. It's like, do you hear yourself? So yeah, Jewish people who have their own country and nuclear bombs, and they have the Mossad, and they run Hollywood, and they run the talent agencies, and conservative media, and the hedge funds, and they're all in a group chat in New York trying to get the pro-Palestine guys arrested by the cops. Like, so it's only unethical to dehumanize those people. It's very dangerous when you call those people rats because they're just so powerless. but you can dehumanize like white guys, but white guys that you think are racist. Because God knows, those people have all the power. Like those people, there's no risk of those people being injured. Really? I mean, so it's just so on its face ridiculous. Like I said, I'm not offended, but it really is like a abhorrent, shocking statement, and it's just not even Christian. And that's another thing. When I said earlier that it matters that the people that own the porn companies are Jewish, and I said ideas matter, ideas have consequences. Christians are really the only group that say love your enemy, love everyone. Jesus Christ is being put on the cross and says, forgive them. He's being killed. He's God. He's the truth. He's the Word in flesh, embodied in a man. And he's being killed by his own people based on a lie because he was betrayed in the most gruesome possible way after being beaten and tortured. And his friend gave him up, and his other friends denied they knew him. And he says, forgive them. They don't know what they do. They know not what they do. And that's the whole story, is that he saves the world even though we betray him all the time because of the flesh. And anyway, that's our religion. That is when you have an encounter with the living God, Jesus, as a man, not as an archetype, not as the collective unconscious, not as a DMT trip, not as a clockwork elf, but as a man, as God become man, because you can only love a man. You can't love an idea. You can't love an archetype. That's not real. You can't love the collective unconscious. You can love the man who gave up his life. You can love the man who knew us before we were born. Anyway, so those ideas have consequences. When somebody is a secular humanist, like Peterson, and he says, well, I believe Jesus is just like an idea, man. He's like America, right? America and Jesus are just ideas to these people. He says, well, I'm a humanist, and when genocide happens, that's pretty fucked up, bro. That's like, hey, someone should have told Hitler, like, dude, don't be an asshole. This is their philosophy. That's the extent, that's the depth of their morality. Because when they're faced with someone that they don't like or they believe is evil, they say, you're a rat. That's such an evil thing to say. It really is. And the hypocrisy shows the shallowness of that whole moral framework. If you're out there saying, dehumanizing people's the worst thing, and then you turn around and say, oh, I think you're dehumanizing someone, you're a fucking rat. It's like, okay, so clearly that's not actually very solid or consistent groundwork or ground for your moral framework, right? And anyway, so it's a very nasty thing to say. I don't know what I did to deserve that. I would love for him to elaborate on that, actually. He says, I'm a rat. Rats are the enemy of mankind like you, but unlike rats who are the enemy of mankind based on instinct, you are motivated by willful ignorance. I'd love to know what he means by that. I think to steelman the other side, I think what he and Jeremy Boring mean, because, they never actually say exactly what they mean. And that's why a lot of people hate them. That's why a lot of people think they are liars. Because unlike me, they never actually say what they mean. And there is this deception that's just kind of a feature. It's just like baked in. For example, when he dodges the Jewish question, when somebody says, what do you think about Solzhenitsyn? He says, well, I'm just not going to answer that. Well, why not? What, do people not deserve an answer? I mean, where does that come from? This gatekeeping. We believe in a free discussion, except for some things. Some things are concealed and gatekept very carefully. By who and why? Are you smarter than us? Are you better than us? Is this information that the people would do bad things with, unlike you? It's something we can't handle because we're unsophisticated, unlike you. Where does that come from? So the reason why they're losing this argument is because I really wear my heart on my sleeve. I go out there, I'm very honest about it. And they come on and they say things like, oh, well, you're just willfully ignorant. Okay, but what exactly does that mean? Jeremy Boring, when I was on a space with him, he said, well, I think you know what you're doing. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Please be precise and specific. What does that mean? I think you know what you're doing. I don't believe you don't know what you're doing. And this is like the SPLC ADL stuff. It's like if you follow a certain line of inquiry or questioning, well, it's a genocide. Stereotypes, jokes, noticing that all the porn companies are run by Jewish people, they really believe that deep down you want a genocide, like the ADL, like the SPLC, which is insane. It's totally insane. We are Christian, and that means we want Christians to run the government. It's necessary. And I remember I did a Twitter space about this with Lauren Chen shortly before I got unbanned. And I said, yeah, I think only Christians should be in the government. And they're like, so you're going to ban like Jewish people? I'm like, yeah, I think only Christians should be in the government. And it's like, what exactly do you think would happen? Let's say if we had like a Satanist as a president, would a Christian have to kind of sit on their hands and say, yeah, let a Satanist run the government? Or for example, when they put up these statues of the devil in some of the state capitals, these like atheist or Satanist groups, they say, well, if you're going to put up the 10 Commandments, we're going to put a Baphomet. Is a Christian supposed to say, yeah, let's just let that happen? What if we had a Muslim president? What if we had a Muslim president that wanted to turn America into a Muslim country? Would Christians say, yeah, well, they won the election, fair and square? Like, no, of course not. So you have to draw the line somewhere. And obviously, Christians need to make the realm Christian, because the goal of the state, according to a Christian worldview, is to make it easy for people to get to heaven. So it's to make a virtuous Christian moral order in the country. That's the job of the state. And anyway, so at the other side of this ideology, when we say Jewish people run porn companies, it's not to say, so, we want concentration camps. It's to say, so we need leadership that doesn't think this is acceptable. Obviously. But I guess at the center of it is people like Jordan Peterson think that anti-Semitism is a bigger danger than pornography. And it so obviously isn't, for about a million reasons. Like, if we want to get serious about banning some of this filth, let's get to the heart of the matter. The people that run Hollywood and the porn industry and media are not Christian. Why would we expect them to produce content that is good? Jesus Christ is good become incarnate. It's the only way. How could people create content that God shines a light on it if they have no communion with God? If they're atheists, if they are, or if, like many of the Jews in Hollywood, they hate Jesus, they spit on the cross. It can't happen. That's why all the movies, like every movie with Jonah Hill is about smoking pot and having sex, and it's all about, drugs and guns, and it's what it is, right? Every movie, I watched a movie the other day with Jonah Hill. Every movie with him, it's, we're doing cocaine, we're smoking pot, it's fun, we're fucking girls in a strip club. Like, do you think that's a coincidence? So, we're saying, hey, man, obviously the quality of the media, the moral degradation, has a lot to do with the fact that the same people making it are the ones that like killed Jesus. I mean, let's just say it outright. But they say that's so anti-Semitic, it just can't even be said. And rather than correct the problem, rather than have Christians run the media and like identify this and say, okay, now that we know what's going on, let's pass a law that says, no, like these people can't have absolute discretion in what they're feeding to the population, what they're feeding to society. But instead they say to suggest these things, well, that's just too dangerous. That rhetoric is too dangerous. It's too collectivist and anti-Semitic and blah, blah, whatever. And I'm steel manning the position. I'm actually doing them a favor by steel manning. And this is what the debate would look like if they would ever have it, but they don't. They hide behind, these like coded remarks, these like coded, aloof, oh, well, you know what you're doing. No, please tell us. Please, let's have a little honesty. Anyway, so he says, oh, you're an enemy of humanity. Oh, really? And then he goes on, he says, I don't regret the psychopath moniker. Haha. You and your followers. I know your type, buddy boy, but you don't know mine. Okay, it's hilarious. And then his last reply, he says, let me pull it up. He says, I hope with all my heart you reap the full benefit of the stunningly vile company you keep, attract, cultivate, and deserve. And this is, again, it's just like, have a bad one. I wish you bad. Oh, and finally, I hope with all my heart that you suffer and you get what you deserve. This is such like a hateful thing to say. And I'm not saying that as like a baby. I'm not saying like that hurt my feelings. Understand the difference. I'm not saying, oh, I take umbrage and that hurt my feelings. I'm saying that this is a really nasty sentiment. This is a really vindictive and negative and hateful sentiment that comes from a person who is morally bankrupt. People that have joy in their heart, people that actually have love in their heart for God and for people, don't say, I wish with all my heart that you get what you deserve. Who says that? But then, the question answers itself. We've heard a lot of this kind of rhetoric from Israel. And I'm not saying that, what I'm saying here is this. What we hear from the Zionists and from the Israelis and from Jordan Peterson and Shapiro is give them hell, finish the job, get them all. There was an article in First Things, which is a Catholic publication, and it said there's a virtue in hate, and they talk about hating the Palestinians. And it's like, so when Jordan Peterson says, I wish with all my heart you get what you deserve, it sounds very familiar. There's an echo there. It reminds me of something. And what it reminds me of is the same kind of dehumanizing. When he calls me a rat, it's the same kind of dehumanizing, vengeful, wrathful rhetoric we hear from Israelis and Zionists about the Palestinians. And that's not a coincidence. It's because these people are totally darkened. They have no love in their heart. God, who is love, Jesus, love's name, they don't follow him. And that's why when they see their enemies, they don't see someone they would love and forgive and maybe die for. They see somebody that has to be wiped out. Because that is that Old Testament Talmud religion without the Christ. That is this prodigal son, this lost people that idolize themselves. That's what they are. This idolatrous people without the Christ. That's why that sounds so familiar. That's where it comes from. That's where the secular humanism, individualism, Western kind, that's where all that bullshit comes from. It's to supplant Christ and Christendom and the fact that we're all children of God. Now we're individuals, and now it's not Christendom. Now it's the West. And now it's not about loving your enemies. That's not at the core of it. It's not love everyone like you love yourself. Now it's finish them. Give them hell, Netanyahu. You're a rat. I hope you get what you deserve. That's the devil. Sorry, that's the devil talking. That's pride. So that's where you've heard that before. And that's why that sounds so familiar. So, like I said, it doesn't hurt my feelings, but I will admonish him because that makes him a fraud for everybody, because he goes out there and he's this little old man with his gay little suit and he cries all the time because he's such a sweet little guy. He's a fraud. Him bringing everyone up in with this psychological self-help crap, it's a fraud because there's nothing at the center of it. Jesus is not at the center of it. God is not at the center of it. The cross, with Christ sacrificially dying on it for us, is not at the center of it. And so as a consequence, it's all hollow. All this, self-authorship, psychologizing, it's completely hollow. And this is the proof. This nice crying old man who breaks down because he's just so tormented by how sad everything is. Like, this is this is the mask off moment. And I've said some pretty nasty things about people. I don't think I've ever said anything this bad, which is the irony. And I threw something back at him. I said, oh, you shake hands with Netanyahu. And that's like so true. It's like, wait a second. So you meet with Netanyahu, who's the criminal that kills people, but I'm the enemy of humanity. Why? Because I have an opinion? Because I'm a 25-year-old live streamer with an opinion, but you shake hands with somebody that signs off on a kill list for the Mossad and for the IDF? That's totally insane. But aside from that, it's like, as bad of a guy as I am, I don't think I've ever said anything that nasty. Yeah, I attack people pretty viciously, but it's almost always just about what's going on. It's like, okay, you're a crybaby, which he is. You're a freak. You kind of are. He only eats meat. That's pretty freaky. Oh, you should go to Israel since you love it so much. It's like banter. Oh, you glaze Andrew Tate. This is like banter versus you're a rat. No, you're worse than rats. You're the enemy of humanity. And I hope with all my heart you get what you deserve. Yeah, that's a good man. That's a really loving individual. So anyway, but you understand, but I think over this long journey, so that's kind of the wrap on the whole deal. But on this long journey, you see how it's all related. I mean, we haven't gone into detail on every little aspect of it, but you see how it's all really related. We start out with, here's a little curious contradiction. Here's something that doesn't quite make sense. Why is it bad that we say that Jewish people run the porn companies? And why is there this hypocrisy? They want free speech for some things, but not for this. And you come all the way, the mask fully comes off. And there's this hatred and animosity. It's such an intense statement. It's such a strong statement. And you realize, how someone could say something like that and where it comes from. And you realize that this Jewish issue is deeply and intimately related to the issue of Jesus Christ and whether he is God. It's still at the center. It's still the biggest controversy. He claimed he's God. Is he? The Jews say no. The Christians say yes. The Christians say love your enemy. The Jews say, I hope you get what you deserve. Finish them. And so these things are deeply related. And of course, they're related to everything else. Everything that's going on in the conservative movement right now. With Israel, everything that's going on with all this talk about individualism and collectivism and totalitarianism and what do you think that opens up the whole country for? If it's got to be open and liberal and tolerant and progressive to avoid World War II, do you think that has something to do with why we have 1 billion immigrants here and why there's this attack on white people that we can't talk about and so on and so forth? So it's all connected in that way. And that's the debate they don't want to have. Because on some level, the reason they know they can't have the debate is because you get to a point where it becomes, are we going to kill Western civilization on the altar because we don't want to talk about Jewish people, which could be anti-Semitic? And they will say yes. Yes, America, if it must be done, if America must be destroyed for Israel to live, then so be it. That's where the debate ends. And that's why they don't want to have it, because when the debate gets there, they know they lose everybody. That's why it has to be veiled. That's why they can't take the wrapping paper off that one. It's got to be insinuation. It's got to be these coded messages. And anyway, so that's kind of my reaction to the whole Jordan Peterson thing. I don't hate the guy. I think he's a very nasty person. I think people should really meditate on that. Like, who is this guy? I mean, because, yeah, everyone thinks what they think about me, whatever. I'm a misunderstood person. Everybody lies about me. Nobody even knows me. Half the people that talk about me, they don't even know me. They don't know me personally. They don't watch my show. They know nothing about me. Even like Jordan Peterson. You think he knows the first thing about me? Of course not. But whatever. But Jordan Peterson has this reputation like he's the therapist for the country. He's the therapist of the young men for the country. And the guy's like such a hateful individual. I don't know how you could write a message like that to someone you don't even know. And for what? It'd be one thing if you wrote that message to like Osama bin Laden. It'd be one thing if like your kid got raped and you wrote that to your kid's rapist and you're like, you're lower than a rat. It's like, okay, that makes sense. But it's like, oh, some guy that everyone hates because they think he's a racist. Oh, that guy's lower than a rat, and I hope he gets what he deserves. You're a 62-year-old man. Where do you find it in your heart to be to have that animosity? I don't understand it, and we'll never know because he won't debate. And on top of it all, there's that. I mean, you can take my word for it. Maybe you find this, maybe you agree with me, maybe not, maybe find it interesting. We'll never know because he won't debate. He won't have a discussion. Somebody said, when will you have a discussion with Nick Fuentes? He said, when hell freezes over. It's like, okay, so you'll sit down with Destiny, who has said that conservatives should be killed and who is a cuck and who has argued in favor of AI child porn. That guy's fine. You'll sit down with him, but not Nick Fuentes. When hell freezes over for me, but when Destiny comes in, he greets him with a smile and, oh, it's so amusing and it's so fun. And really, whatever. I mean, but look, I feel like when you're in the realm of ideas in public, you got to be willing to talk to the other side. It's not about cloud chasing at this point because I ratio him on every post. Every time he talks to me, I ratio him. And also, he talks about me more than I talk about him. So, when I was younger, people used to say, oh, well, you're not famous enough, or, you're not relevant enough. We don't care about you. But clearly, if you're that mad and you're talking about me frequently, and I ratio you, and I have a pretty big platform myself, then none of those arguments really apply. What is the argument why you wouldn't sit down and have the discussion? People want to hear it. It would be interesting. There is an apparent disagreement. We are public figures, but they say, oh, well, we won't dignify that. Why? The free marketplace of ideas, but it's closed today, but not today. And the same goes for guys like Tim Pool. Tim Pool does a drive-by every other day on his show now. It's like a one-sided debate. I challenged him. I'm like, bring me on the show. He won't bring me on the show. But instead, he'll go on his show every day and say, yeah, so Nick Fuentes said this about Israel. Well, my position is this. It's like, okay, so do you want to just do the whole debate and you just talk? And I'm not there and I don't have any speaking time? Because that's kind of what it feels like. Everyone's so confident in their position. Tim Pool, Jordan Peterson, Shapiro. I'm the worst guy in the world. They're always talking about me. It's so self-evident that I'm such a bad guy, but no one will take the opportunity to embarrass me or expose me, shine a light on my true intentions. It's totally ridiculous. People, I think, are just sick of it. I'm sick of it. I think people are sick of it. People are sick of the games. We're just sick of the dishonesty. Stop the cap. Stop hiding. Stop lying. The thing that people like about me, the reason I'm the people's champion is because I'm accessible. I'm out there. I'm here. I go live every night. I'm visible. I'm accessible. I'm there. I go live every night. People can send $5 and say anything they want on my show. And it can't be free because then we get a billion messages. But people can send $5 and they can ask any question. I take questions every single night. I'm in spaces like these. I'm open to debate pretty much anybody as long as they have a decent platform. But all these people, they're these cloistered. They've become these like cloistered ivory tower, fragile, constantly attacking, but they will never accept anything back. Blatantly hypocritical, refuse to answer for it. So that's why people are just starting to hate the whole conservative side. I mean, you can disagree with me, hate me, be indifferent to me, but I don't have that situation going on. Anyway, so that's that. Total yap fest. Enough yapping. But that's just how I feel. So, total yap fest. So, Jordan, the gauntlet has been thrown down. Okay. I doubt he's listening to this, but if anybody knows him who is, challenging you Doesn't need to be a debate, can be a discussion, but it can be a debate too. Let's hear it. Let explain to the world, because I'd love to know the answer. Why am I malevolent? What am I willfully ignorant about? Why am I an enemy of humanity? I'd like to know. I think everybody'd like to know what you mean by that. And I'd like an explanation. And ideally, I'd like a conversation. But I doubt that'll happen. None of them will do it. Shapiro, Peterson, they don't play that way. So that's that. But yeah, I'm wrapping things up here. I might bring some guests on. I see we have some requests. Why don't you, if anybody wants to talk, make a request. I'll hang out for a little bit, but then I got to go. It's getting late. Ugh, I just saw a centipede. Gross. I'm going to let him live, though, because it'll kill the spiders. Maybe I'll kill him. It's kind of freaking me out. All right. Yeah. So I'll hang out for a minute, but not too long because I kind of got to go. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Before we go to the speakers, though, follow my Twitter. Follow my Twitter right now. If you're not following me, follow me. And I'm on Rumble. New studio, new start time, 8 o'clock Central. Rumble.com/NickJFuentes. I'm live every night at 8 p.m. Central consistently. And I have a brand new studio. So I got to get the shilling out of the way. I got to get the shilling out of the way on a big space like this. Okay, so that's the monologue. We'll bring in some guests here. We got Zherka, we got Myron. I'll bring them in. Let me see if I'm going to bring anybody else. Probably not. Oh, Suleiman. I'll bring in Suleiman. And probably Chad Champion and maybe Tenrio. All right, so I'm bringing everybody in. We got Suleiman, Zherka, Myron, Tenrio. We got Chad Champion. What's going on, everybody? What's up? Thoughts?
How's it going?
What up?
You know what
Hey, what's going on?
I saw the statements by Michaela, and I think you were being too generous with her because you said she made statements, but they weren't even factual. Like she was just making things up. Like how have Jewish people won 30% of Nobel Peace Prizes? First of all, like fake news, it's like 8%. And the second thing is like, and I had this discussion with one of my friends actually. He was like, "Oh yeah, Jewish people won bare Nobel Peace Prizes," and I was like, yeah, but who decides the Nobel Peace Prize? It's not like there's some kind of test. It's like a body, mainly of Zionists, who all decide it. So in reality, how is that even some form of proof of intelligence or skills or ability?
Right. Yeah, that's true. The numbers. Well, that's why I said earlier, I said, I am being generous. I am steel manning the other side. But I think it's really besides the point because it's like, they always want to shift the goalpost. Lupus posts the statistics that they run all the porn companies and they want to jump in and say, well, actually, it's about Nobel Prizes now. And you're right. I think the number's wrong, and the process is also deserves scrutiny because it is subjective. Act like a Nobel Prize. It's like it's automatic. Like obviously, like anything else, it's a subjective process. That's like saying we're going to go to the Oscars. Like anything else, it's an institution. There's a process, and that needs to be scrutinized. But it's also just a complete non sequitur. Whether it's 8% or 30%, whether the Nobel Prizes are handed out totally based on merit or not. What does one have to do with the other? They run the porn companies. Doesn't that suggest something if that pattern exists? So that's kind of how I feel about it, even though
100%.
Right.
Yeah. It's not correlated whatsoever. And then the other funny one was, there's many, because I went through this with my own space as well. She was like, "Oh, I'm seeing Nazis in my lifetime that didn't grow up in a cave." Like, which Nazis grew up in caves? Like, what the hell are you teaching her?
Yeah, I don't know what she meant by that. But what's up, Zherka? We got Zherka on here.
Nick, that was a brilliant speech, but I think you went way too easy on Michaela. Like, this is a fraud woman traveling the world, trying to sell her books and all that stupid shit. She's just trying to make money as what is she, like this conservative-based woman that's pro-family, but she gets fucked by a bald dude before he even has the Bugatti? Like, what are we talking about? She's literally she's a part of the hookup culture and total fraud. Jordan Peterson cries on camera every day like a bitch, and I don't think I don't think anyone's called out Peterson on this. Have you noticed he'll always cry when his new book is coming out? What the fuck
Yeah.
is that about? It's always linked to this commercial. Like it's always something he's selling, and then he wants to get a emotional spike out of the audience and get the viewer count up, and then here come the waterworks, and then he talks about his gay 12 rules for taking Israel's dick up his ass.
True. Well, I try to keep it. I'm bringing in you for
I'm
the
bringing slam
banter.
poetry, Nick. Mine's like slam
Yes.
poetry.
Yeah. Well, I had to be fair because everybody looks at me and they're like, "Well, who is this asshole that Jordan Peterson hates?" So I gotta play it cordial, especially because I got banned on the last space. I'm trying to keep it.
But
Yeah, I
Nick,
was worried about that.
Yeah.
W on ratioing the fuck out of her.
Thanks. Yeah, I totally. I don't know what's going on. It's like these people don't have real followers. Because how is it? What I mean,
Yeah,
Jordan Peterson has like 5 million followers,
yeah,
instantly ratioed.
yeah, yeah. It's
I
almost
just
like they
think it's
control the
funny.
system.
Jordan Peterson has just become so unlikable. Like even people on TikTok, he's always getting shit on in the comments. Like he has this weird like supervillain personality now. It's just like he has no actual following, and then it's almost like he's trying to make himself like off-putting. It's like, what the hell are we doing here, buddy?
Yeah,
Like just the
I
way
remember.
he talks
I
and
still, I
presses.
still, I still remember when I got off the Jordan Peterson train years ago. They asked him, "Do you believe in Jesus Christ?" And he said, "Well, that depends on what you mean." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" And then they also, did you see Peterson get asked about the Jewish question? And he's like, "Well, that's a hell of a question." And the first comment was like, "Why is it a hell of a question? You just spoke about these other religions and races. What the fuck?" And Nick, you nailed it when he had the answer to Muslims, answer to Christians, and then 7 years passed, and we're still waiting on answer to the Jewish tribe.
Yeah, I have post
Well, it's
notifications
worse
on.
than
I'm
that. Well,
waiting
it's
for
worse
the
than that.
Jewish
Didn't he call
video.
someone a rat for actually calling him out on that? So when someone said, "Okay, you missed a religion," he was like, "What did he say? You're an evil rat." So like, there was someone who said, "I couldn't help but
Psychopathic
notice a
rat.
religion missing from your message to videos. A message to
Yeah,
Muslims, a message to Christians, and then he wrote, 'You're an evil rat.'"
yeah. Well, you guys got to remember, this is the guy who is watching dead babies in Gaza and saying, "Bomb them to hell." Like this guy's really fucked up person.
But it's worse than that because, first of all, I never rated this guy. He's obviously low IQ. And the worst thing about it is, you know how you know that you can't trust someone when they're always wrong about every issue? So he was against someone who was pro COVID, pro lockdown, pro war. So whenever somebody's extremely wrong about everything, and then
Yeah,
someone
even
who.
Kavanaugh.
Sorry?
He even turned on Kavanaugh. Like every
Exactly.
time there's a bit of liberal pressure from his gay CAA company, he just caves like a bitch.
Yeah, he sucks. He's always sucked.
So I'll weigh in a little bit here, man, because I've been obviously seeing what's been going on. First thing I want to address is the Holocaust, right? And I agree with Nick on that. That I think everyone knows this in the space at this point. That if you're going to look at, like, let's imagine a pyramid, right? The foundation of that pyramid, the biggest part at the base is the Holocaust, and that right there is what allows them to take the victim narrative and say never again, to justify and rationalize a lot of things that they do. Oh, you're anti-Semitic, etc., and it always comes back to the Holocaust, never again, right? And and if you even question it, I mean, it's illegal in a bunch of different countries, right? But like, if you question other revolutions, no one gives a shit, right? If you question slavery, you question the Bolshevik Revolution, you question any of this stuff, no one gives a fuck. But if you question that one thing, you can literally go to jail, right? And then when you look at the numbers and you look at it like, this doesn't mathematically make sense. Typhus was a thing back then, Cyclone B, etc. You go in that whole wheelhouse, you're like, what the fuck is going on here? But if you even mention that, they immediately call you a Holocaust denier, banned, denied, PayPal processors gone, payment processors gone. So it's crazy how you can't even question that event, right? And I think the reason why you can't question is because that event is what they always go back to, right? As like the home base for why you can't criticize them, right? Never again, because this might lead to this, right? That's number one. Number two, as far as Jordan Peterson goes, etc., I used to support him a lot, man. And we've had his daughter on the show before, etc. We had talked about doing collabs or whatever, but then I kind of realized, like, he's not willing to have discussions with guys that have different viewpoints that are still in the conservative space alongside him. I don't know if you guys have caught on to that. He'll bring somebody on like Destiny and have a discussion with him, but he won't have a discussion with a guy like Nick. He won't have a discussion with guys like me who agree with some of his points, but then disagree on some other things as far as like, you know, how we should deal with things. And that's when I kind of said, well, okay, what's going on here? What happened to the freedom of expression? And then the other thing too that I dislike, and this is just kind of a whole Daily Wire thing, is like these guys are fucking like terrified to talk, you know, criticize Israel. And that's wild to me because it's like the other thing too, Nick, which I wanted to tell you this. I've told you this before offline, but I might as well say here in front of everybody. The reason why they don't want to talk to you, Nick, is because they understand that defending Israel, especially from an American foreign policy perspective, is an indefensible position. I'm going to say that again. The reason why they don't want to talk to you, Nick, is because defending Israel from an American foreign policy perspective is an indefensible position. Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, none of them can actually rationalize and justify it with real facts as to why the fuck we should even be over there, why we give them so much goddamn aid. It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't benefit the United States whatsoever. Charlie Kirk, all these guys, they still for Israel, but they will not sit there and defend their belief system, which that tells you everything you need to know. But that's really my take on it.
Yeah, totally agree with everything you just said. And that is a huge part of it, is that any of these debates, whether it's, like you said, the foundational issue, which is like the whole house of cards is built on that, they can't debate that because it's a losing debate. They can't debate Israel. They can't debate the broader topic in general. You know, he says it's a hell of a question because they know it's a losing one for them. You know, somebody like Shapiro, if him and I ever sat down and did an Israel debate, there's no way that he could win that one. And they're trying to retcon it now. There's something interesting going on where, you know, for years, people like myself have been making the case against foreign aid to Israel, the war in Iraq, you know, all these different things. And they never actually had even a counter argument. You know, when we would say, why is Israel our closest ally? They really had nothing. You know, it's like when I debated Destiny on Fresh and Fit. I mean, you were there, Myron. I asked Destiny, I'm like, why is Israel our closest ally? And he's like, well, I'm sure we
He was
have.
using his phone and he still
Yeah,
won.
well, he had his screen open, and he's like, "Well, I'm sure we have bases there, and I'm sure." I'm like, "No, we don't have fucking bases there, and no, they have never sent troops to help us in a war, and blah blah blah." And so now there's like this new thing where, if you've noticed, guys like Charlie Kirk and J.D. Vance are saying, "Well, we support Israel because they're the custodian of the Holy Land." That's the new one. They say, "Well, they're the custodian of the Holy Land," you know. Or J.D. Vance said, well, it's because of missile defense. Israel's a pioneer in missile defense technology, so they're our closest ally for that reason. But none of it really adds up. Like it's obviously not true on the Holy Land angle because they spit on Christians and destroy churches and they tried to ban the gospel. So that on its face is ridiculous. And as far as missile defense, it's completely convoluted. We don't need them for that. We help them develop all their missile defense systems. So to say, oh, well, they're this
Yeah.
pioneer in technology, all the money came from us, all that their military is built on American foreign aid. So, you know, they're looking to retcon like a new answer for that question, but they're just grasping at straws because there's just nothing there. So you're totally right.
It is interesting how is my mic on? You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting how anytime you open that argument of, well, what does Israel do for America? Whether they answer it right or wrong, it always comes out really awkward. The whole stream gets weird, the chat goes weird, and everyone gets this feeling of this is the most parasitic, one-sided relationship, and America is just losing everything. Uh, but it is interesting that Peterson and these guys, they would stop right there, Nick. I think that question would nuke them right there. I think they would stutter and kick you off the show right there because there is no answer, right? Solomon said earlier that Peterson is a smart. Jordan Peterson is very intelligent. Like he subverted the whole Christian right wing movement and turned it into some Judeo Christian image of God, but not really God, weirdo cult. And yeah, I think Nick, that first question, you would nuke him, and that's why he'll never debate you.
Yeah, it's true. We also got Sovereign Bra in here. What's going on, Sovereign Bra?
What's up, boys? Lot of good points being made. I think Myron really nailed it on the head when he said that the reason why he won't debate you on this is because from the foreign policy angle, he knows it's an indefensible position. It falls apart immediately once you start pressing him on the facts. And I think the whole interaction is really interesting to me because I followed Peterson back in like 2016, spent a lot of time listening to his lectures and really kind of internalizing his outlook on life, his perspective on the logos, the importance of speaking the truth. And he's gained a lot of the wisdom that he's expressed from analyzing totalitarian movements throughout history. And when I look at his interactions with you on the timeline today, for example, and in the previous tweet where he called you a rat, it's like I see his entire ideology falling apart over this one subject. For example, one of the things that he's condemned in the past is the language of dehumanization, right? He talks about how once you start dehumanizing your enemies, calling them rats and stuff, he says this is what the Nazis did before the Holocaust, and that's a bad thing that you shouldn't do. But if you criticize Jews, well, that logic goes right out the window, right? And he starts calling you a rat. And I think the reason why he's attacking you so viciously, besides, financial motives that he has with the Daily Wire to defend Israel and international Jewry and stuff like that. I think one of the reasons he's attacking you is because he perceives you as someone who is building anti-Semitism in culture that he thinks potentially could reach like genocidal levels, right? This is how I'm trying to place myself in his shoes, and I think this is why he's so viciously attacking you. And it's interesting to me that he refuses to debate you, because it's like, if that is his position, if he thinks that anti-Semitism is rising to levels that could reach a degree of violence or genocide or whatever, and if he thinks that you're playing a part in it based on his own ethos of speaking the truth no matter the cost, doing so because you believe it's the right thing to do, you would think that he would be up to debate you. But the reason why he won't is because I believe he knows damn well that if he debates somebody who's educated on this subject and who can actually, point out the subversive ways in which Jews have used their power on the world stage, he knows that he's going to get wrecked. Same with Ben Shapiro. Same with any of these guys that refuse to debate you. And it's just like, I just see it as like hypocritical of him, man. Like I used to respect him a lot, like, I don't know, 7 years ago. And when I see interactions like this, it goes right out the window, man, especially when you know that there's a financial motivation with the Daily Wire. So anyways, keep pushing, bro, because everybody sees the ratios. Everybody knows where the sentiment it lies. Like everybody's noticing. And as a fellow Christian, I think that you're doing a good thing by pointing out how they use their power for evil as opposed to good. And you should keep at it, man.
Thank you, man.
There's one other thing I wanted to add real quick, Nick, too, which Sovereign Bra kind of brought this to my attention when he was speaking. You guys got to remember that the Daily Wire's audience are mostly older boomers, right? That never question Israel, the Nikki Haley supporters. Like, we unequivocally support Israel. But there's this new school of guys that are waking up to the fucking bullshit. Guys in their 20s, 30s, etc. Guys that listen to Nick, me, Sneeko, etc. Guys that are questioning our Israeli alliance, right? But then you got the boomers like the Ben Shapiro's, the Don Bongino's, the Crowders, etc. These guys, wait, we support Israel, blah blah blah. But there's a rift in the conservative space on this Israel topic, and I see that the younger people are waking up and realizing that these guys are not our greatest ally. It doesn't benefit us to help them. Like, people are finally starting to wake up about the Iraq War and realizing that 9/11 had fucking nothing to do with that shit. People are Googling the dancing Israelis. People are looking into World War II more. People are starting to realize, like, wait, why did Hitler kick these guys out of Germany? Oh, he kicked them out because they had predatory loans, usury, and the central banks fucked up Germany with the Versailles Agreement. And they realized that he needed to build back his economy. Like, when you actually start researching shit and you figure out why things happened the way that they did, you're like, wait, this makes sense. There's a reason why they didn't translate Hitler's speeches back in the day. Because if you listen to what he says, all the comments, people are waking up. You look at these AI speeches on YouTube comments, they're like, holy fuck, like, no wonder they didn't want us to translate this. This guy makes a lot of fucking sense.
Hello, is
Now, I'm
this?
not sitting here,
Hello, is this?
and I'm not sitting here. Hold on. I'm not sitting here saying like, oh yeah, Hitler was the greatest person, etc. But we all did deplorable things during World War II. Eisenhower killed a bunch of people. We put Japanese in concentration camps. But the Allies, we don't talk about what the Allies did that was evil during World War II. We only talk about Hitler. We only talk about the Nazis. We only talk about the victimization of Jews. But we don't talk about the 30 million Russians that died during the Bolshevik Revolution, etc. So my thing is this: people are waking up to what the fuck is going on and getting the other side of the narrative. And I think another big reason why these Daily Wire guys or these, older boomer conservatives voices don't want to talk to the new school is because they don't want their audience to hear our perspective, because they've been having these talking points for so fucking long, guys. We're talking about the better part of 20 years with this Israeli support.
100%, dude. 100%. Because they all know. They, like Peterson, for example, he knows if he debates someone like Nick and Nick brings facts to the table, his entire audience is going to get red pilled. And they cannot afford to let that happen. Same with Ben Shapiro. They're all trying to consolidate a tight grip on the conservative sphere, but it's slipping through their grasp. They know it. They're panicking. Peterson, he's trying to do everything he can to dehumanize Nick, to turn his audience away from him and slander him and malign him in their eyes so that they won't listen to him, because they know once you start listening to somebody who knows the truth and they're going to present a version of history that you've never heard before that makes sense, that's a dangerous thing. And the entire legacy conservative media establishment rests on these narratives that nobody has been allowed to question. They're panicking, bro. And they all know that when millennials and Gen Z grow up and we have the power, all of their narratives are done. This is why they're so afraid.
I just want to add a point in terms of when you said Jordan Peterson and his following. Let me be clear: the vast majority of his following is inorganic. There was a study done about him and Ben Shapiro, and it looked at why people began to engage with him. They looked at why people started to follow him, and what actually happened was algorithms demonstrated on social media that whenever somebody veered off and start thinking outside the box, or veered a bit more towards the right, or start being more believing in conspiracy theories or whatever, Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson's content would come forward to them and they'd be proliferated with that content. So people assumed or were manipulated into thinking or brainwashed into thinking that Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson, their content is outside the box. It's not mainstream and it's something different. And so for that reason, they gained a huge amount of following. So it was based on manipulation, because in reality, when you looked at their views, it was always the mainstream views. I mentioned COVID, the war, Russia-Ukraine war, now the genocide in Gaza. Every single one of their issues has been the mainstream media narrative. But there were people who psychologically want to veer off from the mainstream and they want to think outside the box. They want to be different. And as soon as they did, it was their content that was given. So a large mass of people were manipulated into following them, thinking that they weren't mainstream, that they were providing something different, when in reality that wasn't the case. So it was pure manipulation. Hardly any of it was organic.
That's a good point. Yeah, back in 2016, I remember when all that went down, because, I'm old enough to remember. I'm not that old, of course, but I was in high school when a lot of these guys got their start, and I kind of witnessed their rise. I remember when Ben Shapiro was really just putting himself out there with his first book, and he was on Piers Morgan, and he was on Truth Revolt. That was the original company. I think Boring was involved in that one too. It was called Truth Revolt Originals and PJ Media. And it was him, and Clavin was a part of it. And at that time it was Bill Whittle, who was a Gentile. And I thought he was actually a pretty cool guy. He was I think he was Gen X or maybe a boomer, but he's really into flight and space and stuff like that. So just like a classic boomer. And you're exactly right. I mean, at that time, specifically, all of those guys came out of Breitbart. It was like Breitbart and Rebel Media. Breitbart, which was run by Steve Bannon at that time, and Rebel Media, which was and is run by Ezra Levant. And Bannon, of course, is a representative of the Zionist Organization of America. Ezra Levant is a Zionist Jew himself. And out of Rebel, you got all the Canadians like Lauren Southern and Gavin McInnes and Faith Goldy. Faith Goldie's actually good, but she was part of that stable. And there were some other minor ones who are not really relevant anymore. And then
Trainers.
out of Breitbart, you got Shapiro. People forget this, but Shapiro was at Breitbart. He quit over Michelle Fields. Shapiro was there, and Milo was there, and there were some others too. And so at that time in 2016, there was, obviously with the rise of Trump, there was a ton of interest in what they called the alternative right. It took on a different connotation. It became something else. But in 2016, the alt-right was just considered not neocon. I mean, technically, the phrase was created by Paul Gottfried and Richard Spencer in 2008. But in 2016, it came to mean something different. Trump was considered alt-right. Breitbart was considered alt-right. And it was born of this idea that people were rejecting Romney. They were rejecting Paul Ryan and this free market neoliberal stuff. They were rejecting the neocon foreign policy, the nation building, all that stuff. And Suleiman, you're 100% right. There was this huge appetite for an alternative to that. It came in the form of Trump, but it very quickly got co-opted by all these other figures at Rebel, at Breitbart, the intellectual dark web. And they said, hey, we're something different and we're something transgressive and edgy. Facts don't care about your feelings. And, we're going to talk about how feminism sucks and whatever. And it was all the same crap. And it was all these Zionists that, I think have kind of reestablished the old consensus. They were the consensus. They are the consensus.
Nick, what shocked me the most is while a race war is happening outside of every American's window, it's been 7 years of these right wingers still talking about transgenderism. It's kind of hilarious, right?
Yeah, well, it's like the least transgressive thing that a person can talk about, because it's only the latest and most egregious, wave of this progressive sexual revolution. Like they'll never talk about feminism. All the women got together a few weeks ago, like Ashley St. Clair and Lauren Southern, and I think Michaela Peterson too. And they're all like, the reason Republicans can't win women is because the fucking incels are turning us off and making us mad. And it's like, okay, so you're just like a feminist bitch. And they're all pro-gay. Like Tucker's pro-gay and Trump is pro-gay. Carrie Lake is a fag hag. Like a quarter of the GOP staffers are gay.
And all those conservative women were leaked that they're all whores behind the scenes, fucking in hotels, and they're just degenerates behind the scenes.
Yeah, every single one of them. So it's like, so the whole conservative movement, they're feminist, they're pro-gay, they're way softer on like every social issue you can think of. The only thing that they talk about is the pronouns. And even that, I remember a couple of years ago, Charlie Kirk said something like, you could be transgender. There's male and there's female, but you have to pick one. And that was like the most insane, like conservative retcon I've ever heard, where they were like trying to make it work, where at once they want there to be two genders. At the same time, they don't want to say that transgenderism isn't real. So they're like, well, there's two genders and you just have to pick one as long as you're 18.
That was the most obvious psyop is when they put a gay black guy to go after transgenderism, but he's leading the right. A gay black guy. What's his name? You know his name. Charlie Kirk's boyfriend.
Rob Smith, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah,
even in her interaction with you, Nick, she was like, she was complaining about misogyny. So that demonstrates that even in the interaction with you, it was all about feminism. And the reason they cry about pronouns is because, let's be clear, transgender are a minority, and male transgender, which I mean by that is men trying to change to women, are an even more minority. So they focus the right into a minority while they allow all of these other things to destroy basically civilization.
Yeah, that's 100% right. I mean, because when you consider the transgenders are like 1% of the population, and yeah, you're right. You can even get it down further when you segregate it by gender. It's about saying like we're going to draw the line as far away from where it was as possible. And then they'll say, hey, but at least we're drawing a line. They say, well, you have to vote Republican because we're going to hold the line. It's like the line has moved all the way over here. Like you've accepted feminism, you've accepted gay marriage, you've accepted contraceptives, abortion, everything. You've even accepted transgenders over the age of 18, which we're going to draw the line right here and say, well, we're only against transgenderism when it's chemical castration under the age of 18. Everything else is fine, but they'll say, well, hey, at least we're drawing a line. It's like, yeah, well, it's not really much of a line. I don't even think the Democrats would disagree with that one. So
transgenderism just turned out to be a Trojan horse for the gay agenda. It normalized the gay agenda while everyone's arguing about some dude cutting his dick off.
Yeah, well said. That's 100% right.
It's funny you mentioned transgenderism because that's literally how Jordan Peterson got his start. He was all like, you're not going to tell me, because they were doing the Canadian law that if you misgendered someone, it was like a hate crime. And that was his whole start. He was never like a conservative or even right wing. They were going to throw him in jail and kick him out of his college. And then his whole thing was like, oh, I'm protesting that. And then I think he ended up getting fired anyway.
Yeah. Good point.
Well, that he was working for the United Nations many years before that, so a lot of people say that was all fabricated to launch him into the mainstream.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
might be some like Freemason plant. Who knows? We need to do
That's
the
right.
Zherka
That's
deep
right.
dive on that.
The
well,
transgender thing is just pretty much, it's only a symptom, but we all know, all of us here know what the root cause actually is of it all. And, they have a little bit of pointy noses, and I'm not going to say anything more on that. But, Jordan Peterson, man, the guy is like, he's just Yapsville. I had a libertarian friend who actually recommended me Jordan Peterson's works. He bought his book. It's like, hey, go clean your room. It's like, nigga, my room is already clean. Like, why is this a bestseller? This is so retarded. So, like, when I hear
His
Jordan
body's not clean.
Peterson, like, yeah, when I hear Jordan Peterson, like, just being sided with Ben Shapiro and going to do the Daily Wire stuff, it's like what Nick said about Candace Owens, with Candace being questioned, the black community in general are aligning more with America First. They're aligning more with everything
Yeah.
saying in general.
It's like you gotta pick up the sword and just fight the dragon, man. You know what's crazy is they chose Peterson to like put up there, and he has like kind of a feminine gay temperament too. Like he's always crying and stuff. That has to be like a psyop. That has to be it. Because, bro, our dads were not like this.
yeah, well, he's just like a wreck. I mean, he's an emotional wreck. He's on drugs. He's depressed. His wife got sick and he wanted to kill himself. So he's on drugs and he went away for all that time. He only eats meat. I'm sorry, but the carnivore thing is not normal. Like, I don't know. I have come full circle and I'm actually like, no, we should actually moderate our consumption of red meat. I think this, like, I only eat meat. I don't eat anything other than meat. And if I eat if I eat a potato chip, I'm sick for a month. He literally said that. He's like, if I eat anything other than meat, I get sick for a month. And it's like, that's not normal. And I think his daughter's on it too. And what kind of freak?
You misunderstood. He means kosher.
Yeah, good one.
And
Yeah,
he
well,
just lies about the most stupid shit. Like when he was on Joe Rogan, he was all like, "Oh, I didn't sleep for 20 days because I had a carb," and it's like, nigga, that's literally not possible.
yeah.
He was saying just outrageous things.
Yeah, and he was taking like Xanax and stuff for like 7 years on tour, and then he goes, drugs are bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just freaky. I mean, even like the daughter being on that. Could you imagine like dating a girl or marrying a woman who only eats red meat? Like imagine the smell. Imagine your like wife is making a picnic, like, hey, we're gonna go to a picnic in the park, and your wife is like piling in all this like raw red meat. Like now you're cooking it's like a big stinking basket of raw red meat. And she's like, okay, honey, we're ready to go. I'm like, there's something like disturbing about that. It's almost like a horror movie. Like your wife is cooking dinner. She just puts like a bunch of flies swarming around, like a giant platter, a mound of raw meat. This is what's going on in the Peterson household. He's having dreams about his
Hey,
grandmother's
Nick,
crotch.
this whole meat thing started with Andrew Tate and her.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good one. So what happened with that? Is that real? Did they actually?
Well, if we say it's real, we get sued, right? So
Oh, right.
allegedly, she's a whore.
Wasn't she a single mom?
Oh, she has a kid. Wow.
That's what I thought. That's what I heard. But I don't know anything about her. I
Someone
don't
said a
have
kid
beef with
looks
her.
like Tit.
He looks like Tate.
Someone said a kid looks like Tit.
Maybe.
I found it so weird how stupid she is that she used the word rat. Like she didn't even do any research.
Why rat?
Well, he called you a rat,
Mhm.
right? And she said that you guys are dehumanizing. What was that angle?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, that was pretty on the nose. You know, he
On the
called me
nose, indeed.
Yes, right. Like that stereotype. Very
Like that,
good.
yeah.
Yes. Well, he calls me a rat, and then she's like, "If you call someone a rat, you need to be banned." It's like, yeah, that was pretty dumb. But yeah. Well, any other thoughts? Any other big thought? I feel like we're kind of winding down. We're losing steam a little bit.
I'll make a thought real quick.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, Nick, that you remember what we talked about with with Ye and how righteous people always find their way. It's like everybody in this space is extremely righteous. Well, I wouldn't say everybody, but a good portion of us, especially the speakers here today, we're all righteous individuals. And, even when in silence, we all acknowledge that we do righteous things. So you're a very righteous person, Nick, and I want you to always stay that way no matter what.
Thank you, man. Very wholesome.
I do want to say
Very
this,
good.
Nick. They can't evade us forever, bro. Like they've been able to do it for for a long time. I'm not gonna lie, man. They've been able to kind of stave off the JQ, not be able to sit there and have this difficult discussion on Israel and everything else like that. But they can't keep it back because people want to hear this discussion. I mean, hell, when we did that debate with Destiny, we had 100,000 watching. Why? Because people know, and this is before October 7th, and it's because people all secretly know that Israel is full of shit and they're involved in a bunch of human atrocities. But now, after October 7th, we can finally have that discussion. So these tradcons, these boomers that sit there and unequivocally support Israel no matter what, like they're going to have to come to the debate table at some point and have that viewpoint challenged because Twitter is showing it, man. You're ratioing every single one of these guys. So the public sentiment is there.
Yeah, and Nick, I really believe that these guys are botted. They get very little likes. You keep dominating AOC and all of them, right? But I really think it's going to be just like the COVID thing where there is no debate and they just join our side and sneak in. Like, eventually, it sounds crazy, but eventually Peterson will critique Israel and kind of move our way. That it has to go that way. These
I don't
rats
know if he'll do
always
that,
come
bro.
to
Him
our
and
side.
Netanyahu are friends, bro. Like that's the thing. Him and Shapiro can't be critical of Israel because Netanyahu is a personal friend of theirs.
Yeah, but I'm saying they're gonna come be critical of Israel in a way where they can subvert to other other topics. You know how they did with our movement? They have to, because if the whole world is coming on our side, these rats always follow suit. There's no way they're fighting a
Yeah,
losing battle,
Zherka's
right?
right about that. People need to go back to sleep, and the best way to do that is to subvert all talks about what's going on currently, and that's what they do. That's what they're good at. That's their specialty.
Yeah, and all the post World War II trauma and propaganda is fading because these people are getting old and they're passing away, and this new generation isn't that sensitive and hip to the, I guess like the Schindler's List and all those movies they force fed us to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll do what they've always done, which is just avoid the question altogether. I mean, we obviously you guys spoke about.
But for how long, Myron? How long do you think? Like 10 years they'll do this?
No, I mean, I think this discussion is going to have to be had within the next 2 to 3 years, man. Like it's going to have to be
Yeah,
like there will be a debate at some point, whether it's a Kirk or it's a Shapiro or it's a Jordan Peterson.
and
One of these guys is going to have to come to the table and sit there and use these boomer talking points for Israel. Like someone's going to have to do it, bro,
yeah, and what's
and take the
funny
L.
is like Nick. What's funny is Nick Byron. I'm sure you guys agree. What's funny is if they pick like an idiot from our side that doesn't know what he's talking about, they can pick any idiot. If it's the JQ topic, the idiot will dominate these guys. That's how overwhelming it
Yeah,
is. Do you guys agree?
yeah, but that's so true. Because like you don't even have to be that aware to be able to debunk a lot of these, boomer talking points with our support with Israel. Like, you know what I mean? You don't even
Yeah.
have to be that educated on this
You
shit.
you could pull up a Wikipedia page of Zionist control, the lobbyists, all that. Uh, I really think they Nick. I really think they're gonna come to our side. Like, imagine the day where Jordan Peterson says like a Nick Fuentes talking point. I can definitely see that. Like, these guys are snakes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's
Well,
going to happen, but I think it's a lot of what has been happening, which is that, and I'm sure you guys noticed it also, that the whole country was waking up after October 7th and even a little bit before that with ban the ADL. And then after the Trump conviction a few weeks ago, about a month ago, I think at this point, for the most part, all of that stopped. And now all the oxygen got sucked out of the room, and now all the conversation is about Joe Biden and Trump and the election. Like, that's all anybody talks about now. And of course, they're knocking him out of the race. Biden, I'm talking about. New York Times, the whole editorial board, every opinion piece was encouraging him to withdraw from the race. Trump is now like the presumptive president, favorite in the betting markets, without getting too
And
sidetracked. But
Kamala.
yeah, right, and Kamala. And the thing is about Trump, though, is that, of course, Jewish powers consolidating behind him. They've on Wall Street, Silicon Valley, the big Zionists like Adelson, they're all coalescing now around Trump because they know that he's the one that's favorable to Israel. Just like how this new Labor PM pushed out Corbyn. He's all about digital ID, just like in the European Union elections, this right-wing shift, very favorable for Israel. It mirrors what's going on over there. So I feel like they're definitely pumping the brakes on it because things were getting hot for a minute. We were,
Nick,
yeah, go ahead.
Master Jedi Nick, I don't mean to question your methods, but sometimes I worry, like, when you go hypercritical of Trump, you ever think that that's like a bad idea right now?
Well, it's not hypercritical because I'm not anti-Trump. I'm not never Trump, and I think there's a fine line because, if you watch my show on Friday, I went into this a little bit. Like, it is kind of a difficult balance because being too anti-Trump alienates us from the broader right wing. That's really the chief problem.
Yeah, shouldn't we get our foot in the door first with Trump? Shouldn't we do that and then be like, "What are you doing, you Zio pig"?
No, because look at what happened with Project 2025. I mean, talk about having your foot in the door. Those guys they were in the first term, they were in the first admin. They're Trump loyalists, and they got nuked from orbit by all these cucks in the Trump campaign. So no, I think it has to be, it has to come from the outside without being completely anti-Trump. And what I mean by that is, a guy like me, I'm obviously not in the Mar-a-Lago circle. I'm not in the campaign. So in that sense, I'm outside, and I'm also withholding my vote. I'm not committed, etc. But being outside, it also can't be anti-Trump only because, and there's a psychology to this. If you are the guy that has your arms folded in the corner and you're with like 3% of the people that are hip to this stuff, and you're just like, I fucking hate Trump, and Trump wins like the biggest landslide ever in November, you just made yourself irrelevant. You just made it so that no one will listen to you. And I think that's largely what happened to the alt-right. Like the moment that Richard Spencer said he was in favor of Biden, and the moment that they said, we're not about America and we're not about Trump, I think they alienated themselves, and they made it such a way where they were speaking a different language than everybody that would have been the fertile ground for their ideas to spread. So if you go to any conservative in America, they're pro-Trump. And if you go and say, well, I'm an anti-Trumper, they're going to say, oh, what are you? You're with Biden? What, he's some kind of fag or whatever? I mean, so like nobody, you just can't go too much against the grain like that in this kind of situation. I've seen it happen on the right wing. So I agree with
And
you.
one more question, Mr. Future President. I worry about this. Do you ever worry that Candace, Andrew Tate, like these people really avoid you,
Mhm.
bro? And it seems like these are like the Justice League figures that need to be on board, but it seems like they can only do JQ light or they can only dip their toes in it. And bro, it's been years. We've been waiting for years. Do you think that they're going to abandon you this political cycle?
I don't know. I mean, I give everybody a chance. Candace Owens is a special situation. It is pretty blatant the way that she sort of refused to acknowledge me. People are pressing her really hard, and she hasn't really said anything about me, even though it's pretty blatant. I mean, it's a big omission, and it's obviously intentional. And normally, I would be all over that, but what is specific to her is that she may be involved in litigation against Daily Wire. She got fired, they say, because she was associated with me, even though we weren't really associated. And they say that,
Wow, Nick, you are being so charitable. You think that's why she's not talking?
it's not that I think that, it's that I'm gonna give it a little bit of time, and kind of, if that's the case, I'm gonna let that resolve
I
because
don't know. I don't want to sound like a chaos agent, but you got a fucking stranglehold on Twitter. You fucking got all the likes. You got the game in a chokehold. Why not pressure the fuck out of Andrew Tate and Candace? Because if they're gonna fence it now, what the fuck?
Well, but Tate, he was on my space when I came back, and
Yeah, for 5 minutes. He stayed for like 5 minutes and ran into his Bugatti. Like, what the fuck
he
is
was
going
in
on?
there for a minute. So I just don't want to burn any bridges. I mean, at this point in the game, I feel like you're right. I am in kind of like a dominant position. I feel like a lot of people are kind of like waiting to see how things play out. I don't want to burn any bridges. If they don't talk shit about me, then I'm not going to say anything bad about them.
But Nick, it's frustrating to see how you get all of your collabs after the chat pressures them. It's not because of their kind heart or maybe they're sick of dead babies in Gaza. It's always the audience pressures them and then they join Nick. And to me, that's like the worst look for us.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that, I mean, Andrew Tate, he called himself a groiper. He welcomed me back to Twitter. I mean, no one was pressuring him before that. I mean, there are always these like, usually somebody who's friendly with these people comes in and makes an introduction, or a lot of people sometimes it is legitimately they believe lies about me, like the Hodge twins. The Hodge twins didn't know me from Adam. They had no idea who I was. They thought I was just some white supremacist or whatever. And so a mutual friend just said, hey, no, you got to give this guy a look. And they gave me a chance. And sometimes it's that simple. So it's a little bit, the Tate situation is a little different than the Candace situation, and both of those are different than other situations. So you kind of just got to play it tactfully.
Yeah.
I come on too strong sometimes. You got to play it with the right touch.
So no lightning war.
So just on those two things, I think with Candace, there's two factors to it. So one is, as you said, it could be the legal issues. The second thing is she probably wants the grounding. She's already seen that a lot of the people who follow you are very favorable to her. So right now it's probably not in her interest to go even more proactive. I think later, if she continues to do it, then it will be kind of dodgy and you'll have to probably call it out or you'll have to ask some questions. But at the moment, just from her perspective, it makes a lot of sense. I think with Tate, I mean, he made the proactive decision to come on your return space, right? So that's like making a decision. He didn't have to come. Remember, there was few people we spoke to who were meant to come and didn't come as well. So I think there was that decision made.
I agree. When it comes to Candace and Andrew Tate and even like people like on the right, you see how they're like co-opting like, White Boy Summer and they're like late to the party. It all comes down to culture and it all comes down to the content we create and produce. They can buy the culture, these people, these big corporations, whoever you want to call them, but, they can buy the culture, but it's up to us to consume it. If we don't consume the culture, then nothing happens. And we are in control of that culture. We're in control of its consumption. We're in control of its demographics, all of it. So like Candace is like basically spoon feeding, Nick's talking points to her audience and Andrew Tate in their own special way. But they're basically a pipeline. There's always a pipeline, like Jordan Peterson and like many others on YouTube back in 2016 was my pipeline to Nick, for example. So it kind of operates in the same way.
Well, I'll give my prediction. These big figures, Candace, Andrew, I can say it, whatever. What they do is they wait for Nick to get banned, and then they take his angle with a watered down both sides argument or whatever, some gay shit, and they try and absorb Nick's cult like that. And we've seen it time and time again. And I guarantee you, these guys are going to do the same thing they've been doing for years.
But yeah, Zherka, it works in both ways. When we do like blitzkriegs on like certain other people that's not allowing Nick into the space or whatever the case may be, like it does work, but both ways work. It's like, yeah, let them create their content. They take a bunch of Nick's talking points and introduce it to their people. At the same time,
but look at the trajectory of Nick's career. It's never been Tea Party, little politics and small talk. It's been Nick choking them into his opinion. They come our way by force, right? And I really think, maybe I'm crazy, Nick is the genius, so Nick, do your way. But you should definitely have a time limit. That if Candace and Andrew, if they don't want to come with with God, then I think you should nuke the shit out of them.
Well, I mean, with Candace, I kind of have dropped hints that, I do expect at some point that there's going to be some kind of outreach there. But it is still relatively early in the game because she exited a pretty huge major contract with Daily Wire. It did directly concern me. That Censored Men account did a post and said that before she got fired, they called everybody into the conference room and played a bunch of my clips and said, Candace Owens was saying Christ is king, and she got that from Nick Fuentes and blah, which she probably did. I mean, I don't know, at least not directly, but I mean, hey, where do you hear that? You don't hear that at fucking Turning Point. So,
right. Especially when
the other thing too, Nick, I wanted to add to that is that TMZ reported that she got fired right after she came on our podcast, and Daily Wire apparently got infuriated because how you guys know we hit the cha-ching sound effect whenever we talk about Jews instead of saying Jews when we're on YouTube. apparently Daily
Yeah.
Wire got infuriated that she went on our podcast and we hit that cha-ching sound effect, and the TMZ literally reported that. So I don't know, like
Yeah.
we don't really know all the facts, I guess, because obviously there's clearly some kind of legal situation going on. But yeah, it's very obvious, man, when
Nick,
you like look at her content that she's aware of, like she's kind of subtly bringing people's attention to the JQ without like blatantly doing it, which I guess that she's like easing them in almost.
Nick, I think you're being so kind on Candace. When they labeled Christ is King as a racist remark, they were pointing at you. That's been your movement for years. They've been saying Christ is King is racist from your movement. So it's not like she did it by accident. Like, this is so intentional, man.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I think that I'm going to give her a chance to do the right thing, and I'm not going to put an exact date on it, but it's like anything. It's a feel. You kind of there's a feel for things. She just came out with her new show. She's done the show for a few weeks. Obviously, she's touching some pretty third rail topics, and we'll see where it goes. We'll see what the trajectory is with this show, and what her next move is. There was also the turn. She did that big turning point thing the same weekend as AFPAC, and there's other stuff happening behind the scenes with other of the key players involved. So I'm going to kind of play it by ear, because I'm with you. I mean, don't get me wrong. When all that stuff happened, I saw the same thing everybody else did. Of course, I mean, when the Christ is King controversy happened, of course, that was, I mean, ultimately really about me, directly or indirectly. I know that full well, but it is a complicated situation. So I'm going to see.
Nick, I think the collab's gonna happen, man. I think there's just some legal stuff in the thing, but I think the collab's gonna happen. It just makes sense, and I met Candace in person, very pleasant, very nice. I think we might do something with her again in the future, man. I'm definitely gonna bring you up. So yeah, dude, that interview needs to happen, absolutely. And she's no stranger to doing controversial stuff. I mean, she did the George Floyd fucking documentary, so I don't see her as being scared to do the interview or the collab at all. I think probably there's some legal shit in the way, if anything.
Yeah, that's well, and there might be, there might not be, but if there is, I'm giving a little bit of an allowance on that, because I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, I think everybody recognizes she was influenced by me in some way, or she just came to the same position. Either way, I think that I think everyone recognizes it's a pretty big omission for that connection not to be made. So I think that does need to happen at some point in the future. I do kind of expect it on some level. I think it's just right, and it's not entitlement. It's just, I mean, look, everybody can see what happened with Daily Wire. Everybody witnessed, the slogans that were used and the talking points and all that. Who's been saying that for 7 years and paying the price? Everybody knows that, and I made that clear when it was going down. But where it is now, I'm kind of trying to be a little bit patient and, like I said, try and see what the trajectory will be for her. And I think that it will happen. I think she'll do the right thing. And, maybe before the end of the year, there might be something. And if there isn't, then yeah, I think there's going to be a legitimate question, which is, is Nick Fuentes more canceled than Hitler? Like, you do a show about Hitler, but not Nick Fuentes, but I want to give her a little bit of time. I'm going to give her a little time. And,
Do your show from Argentina.
Yeah, right.
Nick, I
Do
think
your
the
show
best
from
angle you took
Japan.
this year, Nick, the best angle you took this year to clear that Zionist kind of fog that's, brain fog that's in every Zoomer's head is teaming up with the Muslims. The Christians teaming up with the Muslims this is like the best thing that could happen this year.
Yeah. Yes. Christians and Muslims. You mean that's a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a great thing. I'm doing a whole podcast with Nico. We're teaming up our audiences because I really think when Muslims and Christians aren't bickering and arguing in the fucking comment section, they can see what's really going on with the Zionist propaganda machine.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's a very, I think it's a powerful alliance. But all right, I think I'm going to wrap this. I'm fading out. It's like 2 a.m. I'm falling asleep here. I'm out of steam here. But so we're going to wrap this up.
Hey, congrats on the new set.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
As I've been almost 5-year now groiper, and I'm not gonna. This the one thing that always bothered me is that you never did the set. I'm like, you made millions, you did it all. It took you a long time, man.
Yeah, well, I talked about. I don't know. Maybe you didn't watch the show, but when I brought back the set, I said, "Look, I mean, we were ready to build it, but then January 6th happened. I was literally getting ready to build it in 2020.
Oh, they froze.
Yeah,
your
they
account.
froze my
Right.
money, and the money got unfrozen, but I lost all my income. So the money was frozen for a long period of time. Eventually, it got unfrozen, but I still paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal bills. I made no money the year 2021 because I had no payment processing. So I made like $0 the whole year. I didn't make any money the year after, basically. So I
Right,
was
and you can't even have those the credit system,
right,
right?
and I was
You have
on
an
I
issue
was
with
on Cozy. There was no
yeah.
Rumble, so it was very difficult to grow. There was no like guarantee that that would have worked out. So I said I'm not going to put a big investment into the show if I don't even know the show's going to exist or be able to make money. The way things were going, it's like I would figured I'd be in jail or lose everything or not literally be banned from making money or even having a website. So it was
Right.
very precarious for like 3 years, and the way things worked out, I got back on Twitter. Rumble took off. I was able to get a processor to do the super chats and stuff, and so it made it feasible again. But
Now you're 15,000 viewers on Rumble.
thank you.
Congratulations. It's just growing. And really, if the audience is listening and you're on the fence, like should I join the Nick Fuentes movement? If this kid was not deplatformed on everything, he'd be at 25 million fucking followers. He would be number one. Clearly, he's gonna make it. Nick is gonna be here forever, guys. So join the movement. And Nick, final question: what do you think Trump would say if he was here to talk to you right now? You think he'd be mad at you?
Yeah, he wouldn't be happy about a lot of this stuff. You know how he's pro-Israel.
Well, you met him, so you can actually tell us how that conversation would go. Like, what would he say right now?
Well, I told him a lot of this stuff. I mean, not so much about Israel, but I mean, my criticisms of him. I told him that at the dinner, and he said to me, he's like, "Oh, you like that? Oh, you're pretty hardcore." He said because I was telling him, I was like, "Yeah," because I
What?
said, I was like, "No, I." This was right after the midterms in 22, and he attacked DeSantis right before election night, and everybody freaked out. They're like, "Why would you attack?" They said that violates Reagan's 11th commandment: "Thou shalt not attack a fellow Republican," because he called him DeSanctimonious. And I said,
Yeah,
no, no, I said, you need to attack DeSantis. He's out of line. I
yeah.
said, and we miss when you went to war with the GOP. I said, the GOP sucks. We are not here for them. We're here for you. And I said, so I liked when you called him DeSanctimonious. And he goes, oh, you like that? Oh, wow, you're pretty hardcore, huh? And he brought something up later. He's like, I know this guy likes that. This guy's. So he was like, we were definitely on the same wavelength because, I was bringing up a lot of the stuff from the old days, a lot of the greatest hits, and I could tell it was,
Leak it all, leak
well,
everything.
maybe someday, because there are some things that nobody knows about the dinner. There was some pretty edgy, well, not edgy, but let's just say there were some things that happened during the dinner that never got reported. So maybe one day there'll be a
Yeah.
tell-all, but
No,
not
Nick,
tonight.
you know why I have so much faith in Trump truly being based behind the scenes is because for 5 years, even when I was anonymous as a groiper, for 5 years I'd always say you could tell who's a fake groiper versus a real groiper because a real groiper doesn't talk about the left, he attacks the right. He attacks the right, he attacks the right, he attacks the GOP, Republicans. That's the real threat. Like these Jordan Peterson, what do they call it? They're Trojan horses. And that's what Trump does. He is one of them.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. That's what it is because
He just got to take off that little hat, and we're good to go.
I don't know. I don't have much hope about that. I think it's kind of cooked, but I mean, he's going to win, and we're going to try and do what we can.
Yeah, I always wondered if it takes like a billions of dollars to run a campaign, don't you need the kingmakers? Like it's kind of like it's pay to play, right?
Yeah, but you don't necessarily need to capitulate. I mean, like disavowing Project 2025, for example, something that did not need to happen, and it's he can't run for re-election, so he really just needs to get across the finish line, and then he could really do a lot. That's the thing, though. I mean, he's very vulnerable. I mean, if he becomes president, let's say he can pardon himself, and obviously the legal problems go away, the financial problems go away. So he is kind of in a good situation, but I do feel like there's this dagger hanging over his head. So what he really needs to do is get in, pardon himself. If I were him, you need to lock down the fortress. You need the Secret Service. You need to know that they got your back. You need to look at the military and see who's loyal. You need to fire the generals. You need to get in control of the intelligence agencies. You need to make sure you're protected because that's the nature of the game. And then you need to weaponize the executive, like dismiss Congress, become an imperial presidency. You just need the right people. You need the willingness and the right people, and it can be done. But the problem is he's old. He has no interest in governing. He wants the media to like him. He is just not the figure that's going to do these radical things. He doesn't have the energy. He doesn't have the interest. That's the problem.
That was my biggest concern is that aura. I'm like, bro, that 2016 aura he had is gone, and I don't know if we're more worried about, you know, how his second 2 years or the later 2 years he became very watered down and a different Trump. I'm worried that he enters the presidency as a watered down Trump. Then we're all fucked,
That's
right?
exactly what's happening. Is he's entering in basically as bad as he was by the end of the last term. And, you know, look at the people that are backing him. It's Silicon Valley, it's Wall Street, it's Ken Griffin, it's Bill Ackman, it's Jacob Hellberg. You know, look into some of these names. Look at where the money, follow the money as always. And look at the policies. He wants to staple the green cards to diplomas. JD Vance is promising we're going to arm Israel so they could bomb Iran. I mean, look at all the VPs, Rubio, Scott, Vance. Each one's worse than the last. People running the campaign, they're anti-Trump, so it's totally cooked.
Do you think Trump's going to stop the
Wait, Nick,
war in
on top
Israel?
of you talking about the donor class, et cetera, that's supporting him, I know you were one of the first people to report on the Miriam Adelson $100 million, which I've talked about this a bit too on my stuff. Is he basically going to, I guess, capitulate to that where he will go ahead and get the West Bank over and try to work it towards an Israeli territory as a part of accepting that 100 million? Is that really what he's intending to do here? And won't that cause even more fucking issues?
That was a rumor. That was reported in Haaretz,
Okay.
where some editorial said that there's a rumor that Miriam Adelson's price tag for the 100 million is she wants West Bank annexation. But then there was another piece that came out. I forget the source, but they basically denied. It was another Jewish paper. They denied that claim. They said she doesn't want anything specific. But I find that very hard to believe, and I don't think that, you know, I'm sure that's not true. So we don't know. Long story short, we don't know. There's only rumors that she wants the West Bank.
Yeah, $100 million. I mean, you know, that's definitely going to come with some drawstrings attached, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was the West Bank. But like that to me, I'm looking at it like, well, that's going to cause another conflict because they're going to fight for their land. That's going to create another fucking, you know, October 7th. Like, what the fuck, man?
Well, yeah, but their whole play is they want South Lebanon, they want the West Bank, and they want to bomb Iran. I mean, that's really the goal. Is they want to clear out.
They want that greater Israel, man.
Yeah. And they already
from the beginning,
started with
dude.
Soleimani. Trump started with
Crazy.
that. And yeah, Nick, do you think Trump will actually end the war in Israel?
No, I don't think so. I think he's going to help Israel continue the war.
Damn.
So no, I don't think so, because what the Israelis want, if you really understand the dynamic in the Middle East, it all goes back to Osiris and the doctrine about countering nuclear proliferation. After the 73 energy crisis, France starts to build a nuclear reactor with Iraq, and the Israelis say, "Oh, we veto that. We don't want that." And the French come to the Iraqis and say, "Well, we're going to build a nuclear reactor, but we're going to use, instead of uranium, we're going to use something else. Instead of highly enriched uranium or plutonium, we're going to use something else that cannot be weaponized." And the Iraqis say, "Oh, no, we don't want that. You know, we want the plutonium. We want, you know, the stuff that can be used in weapons." So the Israelis basically resolve, after they get this intelligence, they say, Iraq's going to build a nuclear bomb. We got to take it out. So they sabotage the program in France. They bombed the reactor in, I think it was 1981. And then ultimately 2003 was about whether Saddam had WMDs. Basically, after that airstrike, the Iraqis fully commit to developing a nuclear arsenal, and the whole program moves underground, and that leads up to the Iraq War. They bombed the Syrian nuclear reactor in 2007. And so what's going on right now, it's all about Iran, that Iran is developing a nuclear weapon, but attacking Iran is not as straightforward as attacking Iraq or Syria, because it's further away, it's stronger, they don't have the mandate after 9/11, it's more dispersed. So how do you take out Iran or do regime change? Well, first, you need to secure the northern border. It's all about the northern border, because Lebanon, or specifically Hezbollah, is trained by the IRGC, supplied by Iran through Syria. So that's why the route of war has gone through all these other countries. You have to take out Syria. To take out Syria, you have to take out the Ba'athist regime in Iraq. You have to take out Hezbollah in Lebanon. And only then, once you've taken out all that, and with American support, can you bomb Iran's nuclear complex, of which there's 5 major cities where they're developing different parts of it. So that is the big picture, and that's what they've been talking about all along. And Trump furthered that because Trump tore up the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal that Obama did under the table without telling the Israelis. Trump tore it up in 2020, and that is what set Iran is increasing their stock of highly enriched uranium. They're enriching it to over 90%. And that is why things are, ultimately, that's why things are escalating. And that, if you read between the lines, that's what they're all talking about, is they want to take out Iran's nuclear program. And Vance, J.D. Vance, who is in the running to be the vice president, he gave a speech about this at the Quincy Institute a few weeks ago. He said, we need to arm Israel so that they can bomb Iran. And that's in Agenda 47, which is the Trump alternative to Project 2025. It's even in Project 2025. They're going to arm Israel so they can bomb Iran. And once they do that, Israel is the regional hegemon. They do the Abraham Accords, which brings the Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, into the fold. Iran is neutralized. Syria is neutralized. Hezbollah is gone. The proxies are defeated. And then Israel is getting Belt and Road money from China. They're getting IMEC money from India, Europe, and America. They're getting investment from the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is opened up by the Abraham Accords. And then then talk about the protocols. They become like a global superpower, and that is what they're looking ahead towards. So all this small ball crap, people think it's like about Gaza. It's so much bigger than Gaza. It's about whether they dominate the world island. The world island. One way to look at the world is that there's a world ocean and there's a world island. Most of the land in the world is the 3-part continent: Europe, Africa, Asia. And there's a geopolitical theory, Dugan believes this also, that whoever controls the world island rules the world. And the way to control the world, because the world island has all the resources, you got Russia, China, they have all the critical minerals, rare earths, they have copper, they've got cobalt, nickel, they've got everything that you basically need, and Africa too. So if you control the world island, you control the world. The key to controlling the world island is to control the center, which is Eastern Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean. And so there's actually there's a plaque in Israel that says this is the center of the world island. And so if they can, and Ukraine has a lot to do with this also. If they can control the center, because that's where they all meet. In 1947, Britain hands off Turkey and Greece to the United States. That's when the U.S. became the world hegemon, because Turkey and Greece are the gateway between the 3 continents. If Israel can control that region in the Eastern Mediterranean and they can control the world island, then they can control the whole world. And so, this stuff, if you really read between the lines and you kind of follow it all the way, this is a very ambitious plan. And it's all about neutralizing Iran, clearing the way for Israel to totally dominate the region. And if you look at what they're involved in, they're all over Silicon Valley. It's really fucked up. Like Palantir, get a load of Palantir and the stuff they're doing in Gaza, the clear view and the facial recognition, desalinization, 5G, AI. Israel's all over that. So they're dominating the industries of the future. And they're going to be the last man standing. So anyway, we could get really esoteric and deep into that stuff, but that is the agenda that Trump is going to further. And Jared Kushner's Chabad, Jared Kushner's a big supporter of Chabad Lubavitch, and that's connected to Russia and Israel, and Trump is connected to the Russian mob. I mean, so go ahead.
And none of this is new. Like, do you remember when General Wesley Clark talked about the 7 nations that they're going after, the Muslim nations?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is like a long-term agenda. So this is definitely going to happen this way, right?
Yeah. I mean, he said, back then, I think it was what? Iraq, Iran, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, Libya. They all got cleared out, and people don't even realize most of them, right? I mean, people know Iraq and Afghanistan, but then you had the Syrian civil war, then you had the war in Yemen, then you had the civil war in Sudan. You have this war in Somalia, in the regime change in Libya.
So it's really
So
not. It's not a presidential agenda. The agenda is
no.
already there. The president just fulfills it.
Yeah, but he can. But his job is to stop it. You know, it's in the interest of America to stop it because this is not good for America. Like because they're saying the president's policy is let's make Israel independent from the United States. That's not good for the United States, and this is going to sound like counterintuitive, but you could look it up. Last summer, all the Jews got to. This sounds dumb the way I'm saying it, but look up Tablet Magazine. It's a Jewish paper. In July 2023, they did a symposium on foreign aid to Israel. And so all their contributors wrote, for or against whether we should get rid of it or not get rid of it. And the guy's name is Siegel. He's like a prominent neocon. His dad's a big neocon, and they're connected to everybody. And the main article says we need to get rid of foreign aid to Israel, but not for the reason that you think. We all thought we were based for being against foreign aid to Israel, and for obvious reasons. We need to spend the tax dollars here. True. But what Siegel, I think his name's Jacob Siegel, his dad's Fred Siegel. What Jacob Siegel argues is, no, we need to get rid of the foreign aid to Israel because it's acting as golden handcuffs. They're saying that as the left becomes more anti-Israel and the left is hegemonic, the United States will use the aid that they give to Israel to leverage Israel and restrain Israel. He said, so we need to get rid of the foreign aid so that we could be completely independent and we could do whatever we want, and the United States can't control us. So the most militant Zionists are now actually arguing against the foreign aid. And that's why, by the way, when Matt Walsh at Daily Wire says we shouldn't send foreign aid to Israel, and Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro say, oh, well, you don't get fired.
I'm based because I don't believe in foreign aid. I'm so based.
Exactly. And Shapiro and Boring say, oh, see, we allow a rebuttal. We allow the different opinion on our show. Yeah, that's because that actually helps them. They don't want the foreign aid because some of these like so-called revisionist Zionists, Jewish maximalists, they want to get rid of the foreign aid so they have the freedom of action. And J.D. Vance, look into him. He runs a hedge fund. He was with Peter Thiel. The guy's like a Straussian. J.D. Vance says we need to arm Israel so that they can conduct an independent foreign policy. We need to arm them so that they can confront Iran. So, this is the policy. And the policy is to make Israel independent of us. But we want these countries. It's actually, ironically, America first, to make these countries dependent on us. Same thing. It's going to sound counterintuitive. I don't support the war in Ukraine, but it is indisputable that the war in Ukraine has made Europe more dependent on the United States. And it is bad for Europe. It is very bad for Europe. It is lethal for Germany. Germany will never recover from the economic damage of Nord Stream 1 being destroyed by the United States because they need the cheap energy for their manufacturing, which is 25% of their economy. They will never recover. It has made them dependent on the United States. We have more protectionist policies than we have in 30 years. It's benefiting our economy at their expense. And those policies give us more power in the world. And the only reason they're bad is because America is so gay. If America was based, this would be a good thing because then we could use that power to make the world the way we want it to be. But instead, it's being made bad. So, and that doesn't mean I support Ukraine, the war in Ukraine. I don't support the war in Ukraine. But making our allies dependent on us and an extension of us is, in the strictest, most technical way, beneficial for our, the ability to project power in the world. So when they say cut foreign aid to Israel and they say, Israel must become independent of us. Well, why would Israel need to be independent of us? Only if they were going to defy us. They want Israel to be independent so that now, by the way, we fucking created Israel. We created Israel. We defended them. We saved them. They stole the bomb from us. They only exist because of us. And now that we've given them, nearly $1 trillion or $500 billion, whatever it is over the life of the country, now they want to say, thanks a lot. And now they want to run their own foreign policy and defy us. And now that we paid for their defense industry, now they want to do contracts with China. And now they want to get investment from Saudi Arabia. And now they want to be in the Belt and Road and
Wait
so
a
on.
minute. Nick, are you saying Israel didn't beat 10 Muslim nations at once, all at the same time by itself?
No, yeah, obviously not. They did not. They needed us. I mean, and, people don't even know about the war in 73. The war in 73 is just like what's happening now. In 73, they were so close to losing. And even back then, they were talking about the Samson option. It was the same thing because they were being overwhelmed. And they basically said to Nixon, you need to help us out or we're going to nuke everybody. And it's the same stuff now when Mark Levin and Shapiro were like, we have to support Israel or else Israel can use their nukes. I don't think you're going to like it if you don't give them what they need because then we'll just kill everybody. Like it was the same shit. Golden Mirror in 1973, they did the same thing. And just like in 73, all these liberal Jews got mugged by reality and they became neocons. It's the same thing with Bill Ackman and Jacob Hellberg now. These gay Democrat Jews flipped and now they're right wing because of October 7th. It's the same thing. So, and Trump is like the new Reagan, to follow the analogy. Like the neocons gave birth to Reagan and Bush, and now these October 7th Jews are giving birth to this consensus Trumpism, which is all about corporate tax cuts and legal immigration and supporting Israel against Iran.
And going to China a bit, you didn't mention China much.
Well, it's just, suffice to say, China's our rival, and oh, hey, sorry, my app crashed.
China. It's fucking
I was
China.
going to say,
Bio attack.
about China. Suffice to say, China is our rival. They're our legitimate rival, and Israel will not take our side. That's the whole point. Israel's in bed with China just as much as they're in bed with the United States. And the only reason that they're not totally allied with China is because China cannot project power on an intercontinental basis like the United States. We have nothing to give them. Just like Saudi Arabia, just like Brazil, like a lot of these countries, everybody thinks like, Saudi Arabia joined BRICS. They're aligned with China now. No, they're not. They're taking from both. Saudi Arabia is taking from both. Brazil is taking from both. Like Brazil will do business with China, but they know that China does not give them a security umbrella. The United States does. Same with Saudi Arabia. So China does not have the same force projection that the United States has. And that's the kind of relationship that Israel desires. Israel wants closeness with China, and they don't care if that upsets the United States. So that's what this is really about. It's about autonomy. It's about whether Israel has received such a benefit from the United States. We fought their wars. We gave them all this money. And now that they're set up, now they want to go and cheat on us with our competition. It's like the equivalent of it'd be like if your wife, who you gave everything, and you built her a house, and you
Leave
gave her kids,
destiny out of this.
and yeah, it's destiny. America's destiny. America's Stephen Vanell. And then Melina goes and sleeps with your rival, that guy in Sweden. She sleeps with mean tips. That's Israel going to sleep with China now. She unfollowed me, that fucking bitch. When I got back on Twitter, she unfollowed me.
He said destiny is America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gay, partially Cuban, partially Hispanic, a cock, potentially Jewish roots, but we don't know. It's ambiguous. It's very similar, actually.
Well, he's in Israel right now. He's doing a side mission.
Yeah, that's right. That's so funny.
Which is so funny because, Nick, you used to always accuse him of being Mossad paid, like as a meme. And he'd like, oh, yeah, I'm totally getting paid by Mossad. And he'd like do the whole irony. And then he's literally in Israel licking the wall.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they're being mean to him. You see, they made him walk like 3 hours or something. He was trying to get in the West Bank. Oh, man.
Yeah, they're mean to the Cubans and the Christians and everyone. Yeah.
He's so dumb, dude. Like, I
No, he's
still
not
can't get
dumb. He's not.
over.
He got on Jordan Peterson. He got a fat paycheck out of this.
Yeah, he's smart in one way. I'm just surprised how little he knows. Like when we did that debate on Fresh and Fit, I was like, why did we go to war in Iraq? And he said something like, oh, well, we went to war in Iraq because maybe we wanted to position ourselves against Russia. I'm like, what the fuck? Do you know where Iraq is on a map? Like what? That it doesn't make any sense. And at the time, I was like, that was so out of left field. And then we learned like he literally doesn't know where Iraq is on a map. Like he thought Egypt is on the border with Russia. Egypt on the border with Russia.
Are you saying the phone he was looking at didn't have the right map? Like GPS was wrong?
Yeah, different map of the world. He was looking at the different earlier update. It's a new map.
If you rewatch that debate, it's just him cycling back to they're our greatest ally, bro. It's like
Yeah.
it was very weird.
Yeah. Well, he just well, and then it turned into like, well, if Israel controls the foreign policy, why didn't they make us invade Iraq sooner? It's like, okay, dude. So that was, but you realize the guy's just totally ignorant and has no idea. Like, I'm so glad that meme got out there. That was one of my guys named Jimbo who really did the research and found out, because we just put all these clips together and it's like, here's him not knowing where Palestine is on a map. Here's him thinking Egypt and Russia share a border. Here's him saying the Bible was written in Arabic. Here's him like wondering whether Genghis Khan was leader of Mongolia. Here's like, and it was just like one after that. He couldn't do the map quiz. He got 60% of the states correct on a U.S. states map quiz. He didn't know where Virginia was. It's like, how are you a 35-year-old adult man? Forget about you're a politics streamer for 10 fucking years. How are you a 35-year-old adult male and you can't find Virginia and Wisconsin on a map?
You remember
That's just like,
your first debate with him like 5 years ago, where he made that argument that it's not the illegal immigrants doing the crime. If they were white boys if they were younger white boys, it's the age. The age makes people do the crime. that turned out to be like total bullshit. What the fuck? And I was spoon-fed. I thought he beat you there for a few years, right? But now I've looked into it, and yeah, it's the brown skin, bro.
Yeah, good old Destiny. I feel like he's kind of dropped off the map. He was, when October 7th happened, he had a little resurgence. One, because I think he was like enraged by his divorce, but two, like he was like, so he kind of like locked in. He was like,
Nick's voice when he talks about it. He's on Piers Morgan. That's pretty good.
Well, that's what I was going to say is like, he also became the only left-wing guy in America who was pro-Israel, and that's why he was like carted around everywhere. That's literally why he was on Daily Wire, because after October 7th, like every leftist who is anybody was like, oh, F Israel. And Destiny was the only liberal who, like prominent liberal, who was like, oh, I'm a total Zionist. And that's why, of course, that's why they sit him down, Peterson and Shapiro. They're like, let's bring the consensus back. We're all pro-Israel. Let's just argue about the climate and socialism.
To me, it's so rich how he's like, Destiny became the most pro-Israel, and he's sitting with Ben and Daily Wire. And Destiny's also the same guy who says, the whole biblical story is fake and da-da-da. He doesn't get that he's in there with his enemies, bro. They don't share any ideas. The only thing they agree on is like one topic, right?
Yeah, but he's so ignorant. I mean, I'm sure he thinks that's just like a big coincidence.
I think it's good, though. It makes them look so like seeing them together with Destiny. It makes them look so bad. It makes them look so like fake,
Yeah, well, it's so hypocritical. I mean, they don't want to talk to the far right.
If Destiny is U.S. and Melina is Israel, who's the guy that Melina's with?
Mean ticks.
What country?
Oh, he'd be China, I guess. Yeah.
No, it would have to be a weaker nation. It would have to be.
He's a funny, but it's so funny that out of all the people that stole her away, it was that guy. Like that was so perfect. He's like wearing a skirt or whatever on TikTok. That was so. He does look like he totally like glowed up. It was like, just wait till I glow up. After she dumped him, he kind of locked in. He got way too skinny. He was fucking around with the facial hair. Like you could tell that affected him a lot. You got to give him some, I don't know if it's credit. It's like It's so unbelievable to me how he has such like a shameful existence, but he still shows his face everywhere. He just doesn't give a shit. People like to his face, they're like, "You're a cuck. Your wife left you. Like you're a loser." And he's like, "Why are you obsessed about my marriage? You're obsessed about my sex life." It's like this guy's just pathologically shameless. It's like I've never seen anything like it.
You don't
But
understand. He's reached the process of individuation. He's psychically whole because he has porn and StarCraft. You just don't get it, Nick. You don't get it, Nick. Your Bible, it's like it's the Stone Age, bro. It's about StarCraft and porn.
yeah, Protoss and Zerg and and porn. Yeah, he's a real sexual freak. All these screenshots that came out from Sonny Faz and that picture of him acting like a fucking fish in the pool. Did you see
It
that
was a
one?
seal. You fucking propagandist. It was a seal.
What the fuck
And
was that?
I really think she posted that on purpose as like a humiliation ritual. Women do
What?
that.
Yeah,
Why?
100%.
She said her finger slipped. Like, what the fuck? You know, like my bitch would never post me acting like a seal. Like, you guys will never see that shit.
That's 100%. That is, it's part of it. I have the sneaking suspicion that like him being called a cuck constantly is part of it. Like that's why I don't call him that because I feel like that's part of the fetish. That's part of the humiliation aspect of it. He likes that. So, because that's the only way any other man would just crumble if like it was such an embarrassing, shameful life like that, so emasculated, unless that was part of the play. That was part of the,
Bro, we're
you
just
know.
stardust, bro. It doesn't matter if she fucked another dude. What the fuck are you talking? We're just swirling in space, bro. You're a globalist. You should know this. We're just
Yeah.
stardust. You can fuck anyone, bro. You know what I find weird though? Like his redeeming quality, Steven's redeeming quality is when he debates Nick. His own community says that. Why is he not giving us a Nick Destiny debate? Like what the I know you're down for it, right?
I don't know. I mean, I feel
Oh,
like
you're too big now? You're too big. I don't know. You're too big now. That was
well, because
the fuck.
he blacklisted me. All these debates with him, they're not even really debates. If it was a debate with like a moderator, because we actually had a good debate when we debated Russia and Ukraine. That everyone said that was like the best debate ever. That's what kind of started the like reunion arc.
Was that better than you and Haas and the black people building the wheel?
That was pretty good. Yeah, I think it was better than that. Dude, Haas is like, do you see what he posted about the swastika thing
Bro,
today?
I almost unfollowed. I almost unfollowed when you posted that.
Jeez, what a dude. These communists are retarded. Like it's like we're uniting. It's this weird coalition of like Christians, Muslims, communists, and somehow the communists are like the cringiest one. Like the
But
Muslims and the Christians are like it's Jews. Like what the fuck?
the boomers pissed me off because I'm like, bro, as a Christian, do not worry about Satanism. It's not out there. Satanism is communism. That's what it was made for.
Yep.
Communism is to eradicate the church, right? And Haas debates me on this, like, which is crazy because I remember when he said, "Don't go with Nick" and stuff like that, and then I went with you, and then my career exploded, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's Delulu. I mean, him and Jackson Hinkle, it's just like a clown show. I really don't like Jackson
They're
Hinkle.
friends, but friends who are not that edgy on Xbox Live. You know what I mean?
Yo, Nick,
They
you
gotta
and
get they
Jackson
gotta get
Hinkle are cool,
edgier,
right?
man.
What?
Who's that?
What, Myron? I thought Myron said something. I didn't hear.
Myron, did you say something? Think he lagged out,
Maybe.
or he's just changing costumes?
Oh, my bad. You said it already. My bad. I'm listening to you guys on the computer, but talking on my phone. I was saying if you were cool with Jackson Hinkle, but I heard you now. I'm on delay.
Yeah, he started beefing with me over Oliver Anthony. When Oliver Anthony's song came out, I said, "Fuck this guy," and Jackson Hinkle was like, "Oh, this blue collar guy, you're not fit to carry his bags. He's more of a man," shit like that. And so it was so stupid. And now we're just beefing. And then we got in like a big debate on Twitter a couple months ago about. I forget what. It was something to do with Israel. Oh, because I said, like, I don't support Hamas. And he's like, everyone like and retweet if you support Hamas. And I was like, bro, is this guy like a fed? I mean, seriously. But yeah, no, he's a fucking idiot. I mean, I don't think anybody believes that Hinkle. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that there's some benefit to him being like a huge Twitter account posting all this anti-Israel stuff. But it's obvious that he's not a true believer. He does not have ideas. Like, He's the Benny Johnson of anti-Israel Twitter. Benny Johnson, the plagiarist from Turning Point, who's just like a fucking idiot, bisexual, like that. Jackson, he also has some like weird sexual thing. We were hanging out. He was saying he has.
Oh,
this
you met him in
theory.
person?
Yeah, I met him in person in L.A. A couple
Oh,
of years
wow.
ago. Yeah, and he was totally like nice and everything, but he's like he was telling me he thinks that every man is gay because he thinks that every man like in a hypothetical scenario would have sex with another man even if it was super unlikely. He's like, I think I'm one of the only straight men alive because I think that most men, if you gave them $1 million, this was like what he opened with. This was the opener. It's like, hi, nice to meet you. And we got into his theory and how he thinks every other man is gay other than him. And
Wait, you know, Nick, sometimes I feel like really like the only groiper on earth because when you give, you know how groipers always say, get married, get married. You have this take, you've had this take for years, but now you're hammering it in. That take where you said, imagine your life goal is to be like, oh, honey, I'm home. You made cookies and we can have sex. And imagine how pathetic, how disgusting, what kind of a man would live life for some cookies and pussy and not conquer the world. And I'm like, when you give that speech, the whole chat's like, yeah, go Nick. But none of them actually believe it. Their end goal is to be married. 99% of them, that's all they fucking talk about. I'm like, bro, the incel I can get along with. Like, Nick, that's your best take. And I really think that's what weakens the movement. It's like if everyone just wants to run to a countryside with their wife and cookies, bro, this movement's gonna get weak, bro. We need we need Nick the knives and shit.
yeah, but it's also like a filter because the people what I found out is that you can't take these people who want to desperately to just like talk to girls, not even like have sex with them, but guys really just love what they call the chase. It's not even a fucking chase for them. These like beta male orbiters. They like to text them on Snapchat and say, "How was your day? How are you doing?" Oh,
Yeah, you
well,
said they like to gossip. They don't make money. They
yes.
don't do nothing. They're literally gossiping for free, wasting work time.
Yes, exactly. And I worked with some of these people, and I would say we're trying to get rich. I want to make you rich. We want to be powerful. We want to run the country. And this dude would be saying, "Oh, I don't know about all that. I just want to have like a wife and kids and go live in the woods and blah blah."
You know why I despise these people in our movement is they don't know how much damage they're doing if they get their way and Nick actually gets married this year. You don't know how weak we will be if that happens. They don't really get it, bro. They don't understand that like the whole comfort damages the whole like you're like the Malcolm X of this, the white identity, right? They don't get that if they get what they want and Nick gets married this year, it's not going to be this Nick. Everyone knows that, right? And Nick, I don't care if you're planning to get married this year. If you do it, I'm unfollowing you. I'm serious. You got to stay insult till the journey is over.
Trust, yeah. There's no danger of that. You're right. I mean, it's like be careful what you wish for. They all think that that's what they want for me, and
To me, it's like a slap to the face because all of them are infinitely less successful than Nick Fuentes, and they're telling him how to switch his game plan for life. Like, bro, it's working. Nick's style is working. Don't change it. If it ain't broke, don't change it. Right?
Yeah, I appreciate. See, you have credibility. If I say it, it sounds like a cope. If
Yeah,
I
no,
say it,
they
it sounds
call
like
you
I'm
an insult,
coping.
but they never look at statistics. Like the average woman today at the age of 20, this is past the digital age, her body count is like 7 to 8. So this Christian marriage, they're pretending it's a pact with God. It's not. You're getting a used whore with 8 men who have filmed her sucking dick, worse than OnlyFans. They don't understand that this Christian marriage doesn't exist anymore. It'll only exist under a Catholic theocracy, under Chancellor Palpatine, Nick Fuentes. They don't get that we need change before we can have comfort. They want comfort before change, and I hate this part of the movement. And that's 99% of my chatters, dude.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah,
God of death.
I totally
your
agree.
based e-girl girlfriend is being pimped out by Jack Doherty on OnlyFans right now.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that before you hook up with any girls from Twitter.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, and your life's great. Listen, my powers have doubled since the last time. I'll say this, man. I don't want to offend anyone in the audience listening, but if you have a wife and you have a great life and you support us, remember your wife was fucked by 8 dudes before she was 20 years old, and one of them filmed her sucking dick. That's your Christian wife. That's your Christian life, and you're trying to force it down Nick, who's taking over the world. Shame on you. You're living in misery. You want to stop the tracks. Nick, lightning war to the top. Don't stop. Don't listen to them. And why I have to repeat this is it's the good guys in our movement that are saying it too. They got to stop, bro. Incels on top.
Hell yeah. Chad Incel Alliance.
Incels on top.
Yep.
People who are in secret society
All
on
right.
Yeah,
top.
All
and
right.
That's my
Yeah.
favorite.
yes, exactly. And you know what's the craziest thing is everyone sucks off and licks Donald Trump's nuts. They love, oh, Donald Trump's my hero. This guy's fucked 1,000 bitches. So you gotta hold him accountable before you attack me for fucking some bitches in Miami. And Jesus is king. Every other religion's wrong. Every other country on earth is a shithole. America's the only country on earth. Nick, bro, charge up the audience, bro. This is our year, bro.
This is our year. Yeah. Well, look, I'm fading out. I was ready to go an hour ago, and you're keeping me on the line here.
All right,
I'm
listen.
gassed.
All right, talk about Destiny. You were fired up about the SEAL talk. Talk about Navy SEALs.
No, I think we got to wrap. Look, it's 2:30. This is a good place to end on. It's incel for life. It's
Nick,
America
I'll tell you
first.
this, man. I'll
no,
tell you this.
no. We got
Let
all
me
right.
tell you something, Nick.
One more thing.
Nigga, we
One
gotta
more thing.
wrap
Then
up,
we got to
bro. Come
wrap.
on.
Nick,
One more thing. Then we
Hold
got to
on, let me
wrap.
tell you
I
something
feel like
too.
everyone on this call, besides me and Nick, they give Mike Pence traitor low energy. We need ferocious energy, guys. So hold Andrew Tate and Candace Owens, hold these people accountable. If they don't want to JQ, no, they have to JQ. Nick Fuentes is the future of America, and this is thezerkaofficial.com signing off. Come join us. Come join the secret society, guys, and change your life. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yes, check it out. Well, thank you. All right, I'm muting everybody now. Thank you for that. This is a great space. This is a great monologue and a great panel here. Thank you, Chase. Chase left, but I appreciate him coming on. Thanks, Myron, Suleiman, Zherka, of course. For you guys really got to thank Zherka for the extra hour here for extra innings because it wouldn't have happened. So he's the man, and I'm glad he's back. You know, he took a little break, but he's back with Sneeko. I'm excited to see what they do. Tenrio, my agent, Ten. I have a black agent. Do you know that? Chad Champion, everybody. Thank you guys. And thanks everybody for listening. I appreciate it. Rumble.com/Nick J. Fuentes. I'm back Monday, 8 o'clock Central Time in the new studio. But that's it. I got to go. Okay. So good night, everybody. Have a good weekend. I will see you on Monday.